Folks, hello and welcome to Talking Crit. I am your host, Eric Tenkar. With me, as always, every Wednesday night is none other than Bad Mike Battalato.
Hello.
Mike.
I'm battling a virus on my computer tonight, but
Yeah, right.
but the show must go on, and
He's
that's
not
my own.
battling a real virus. He's battling a computer virus,
It's a
which
pop-up
which
virus.
which strangely enough, if we
Mm.
had Doug with us, Doug would probably be the one
hmm
fixing that.
I would have made a call to Doug, and he would already be on it right now, taking care of it. Now, I do have a call in to his son David, who can help me, but he's probably not like Doug was, always on the computer doing something or waiting for me to call so he can call me a dumbass because I clicked a link or something. So yes, that I did think the first thing I thought of was Doug, and I thought, well, you can't help me now. You're on your own, big guy. So yeah, it sucks. Oh, missed you at ShireCon, Mr. Tanger. You didn't go to
Uh,
ShireCon this weekend?
no, I did not. I'll get to that in a
Oh,
second.
okay, we'll get to that in a second. That's right.
Matt Melman, you were supposed to email me. Somehow it's getting blocked, so I'm going to give you a second email to use because nothing's coming through. I can't find you in spam. So, yes, I like to get my gifts out. So, here, that is another email address you can use. Kurt, Mark, both of you guys, welcome.
And by the way, Ty got his package, or I sent his package, so we'll see.
So,
Our
I did not go to ShireCon this weekend, and I had a bed and breakfast reserved for Rach and I. We were all excited. It was going to be like a second honeymoon.
oh yeah,
We have our 10th wedding anniversary coming up in November. We were all excited. Um, and here's the thing. So on Thursday, we're driving out to my sister's house in Long Island because my niece was off from school. We were going to have an Uncle Auntie Shannon Pinky Day, and we were going to take her out and have a great time. As we're driving out there, and I'm hitting like 35, 40, 45, hitting highway speeds, I'm going to myself, Rach, do you hear that? She's like, hear what? Like the low flying plane that's trailing the car?
oh
She's
boy.
like, yeah, I do hear a low flying plane trailing the car. It wasn't a low flying plane trailing the car. It's my muffler, apparently. So I
Oh
could smell a
no.
little bit of the exhaust going on, too. So it got worse as, we drove out to Nassau County. On the way back, it got a little bit louder. It started sounding like somebody's, lawnmower, a little bit muffled. And it's fine at city speeds. Under 30 miles per hour, I don't hear shit. So I figured we were going to trade the car in at the end of the year. So let's trade it in. And guess what I couldn't find? Couldn't find the fucking title.
Oh boy.
Apparently, it's in my mother's safety deposit box. My mother is in the Poconos with my father. So I have one being expedited by the DMV. It'll arrive tomorrow. I have the release from lien already on the car. I've got everything ready so we can. I think I know what's in stock at the dealer. Sticking with Subaru, going for another Forester. We'll go for a 2021. I'm gonna be if I get what I want, I'll be a happy as a pig and shit. But the idea became: do I fix this car and then trade it in 6 months, or do I just trade it in? And I think the idea becomes
Mm.
I just trade it in. I didn't feel comfortable driving nearly 2.5 hours into Connecticut, staying for a weekend and coming back in the car. So I did not go, and
Well, that's a bummer. Were you supposed to run any games there?
I was supposed to.
Oh no.
Actually, one of the winners of the winner of $100 on last Wednesday, she was one of the people in my game for Saturday. So the moment I got home from Long Island, the first thing I did is I messaged Tom. I was like, Tom, this shit ain't happening. So I had to eat the bed and breakfast for 2 days. We lost out on that.
Mm.
Uh, and usually with Rach, I think we usually get her badge when we get there, and I actually got her badge on Tuesday and registered her for my game because I didn't want to, have somebody accuse me of adding a player to my game that wasn't on the roster. But whatever. What happened with
So
you, Doug?
oh
me blowing at her chair. My fat ass hit the floor. That was my old gaming group, by the way. My old gaming group when I was in high school and my early college years destroyed 3 wooden living room chairs, jumping up and down on their fucking asses, and destroyed 3 what we thought were good quality living room chairs. They weren't good quality.
It's always the case. Yeah, I used to lean back in my chair, and boy, by the time we got rid of our old kitchen set, we used to play D&D all the time. All those chairs were like, because my fat ass would lean back, and I'm like, well, what are you players doing now? Of course, now you get these cool little chairs that they lean back themselves, so don't have to worry about that. But back then, you had to lean back on your two legs, and yeah, that didn't work out good.
Yeah, you know, when chairs start dying, that's a sign. You know, it's a sign of the apocalypse, I guess, but it's certainly a sign. So I did not go, and I'll be honest with you, I'm not signed up to run any games at Gamehole, and Rach and I are on the fence of whether or not we're going to continue with Gamehole. I have our airline tickets. I have our suite at the hotel. We have our badges. I don't know for sure what's going to go on with Gamehole. So.
Well, gosh, that bites.
Yeah.
That really bites because I know that you looked ahead that, and I'm sure. I guess I'll have to talk to somebody else to find out how ShireCon went, because
From what
now
I've read,
we won't know.
Everybody that went had a good time. And listen, it's not like we didn't go because of COVID. We literally went not because my car died. Here's the thing. Back in June, last time I drove out to my sister's house, I thought I heard something, but I wasn't sure. But it only kicks in at like highway speeds, and I don't really drive highway speeds in New York City. You know, New York City is 25 mile per hour speed limit, which means I'm doing 30, 35. But you know, I mean, I this was a surprise to me, but I don't want to spend a couple $100 to fix a muffler when I can, you know, if I'm going to trade the car in a couple months anyway, let somebody else fix the muffler, not me. Let the dealer fix it. I'm not trying to be an ass, but I'm being an ass. So.
Well, so. Oh God, this virus is really bad. This is really bad. It's just popping up every second. I have to keep shutting it down. We got together show this week, obviously, as you see by the shirt that Doug did not get to wear this year at the con. That's his shirt from this year. I was cleaning out some boxes today. I found it along with a bunch of other stuff, and this show's going to be about Doug Rhea and his impact on our lives and the con he founded, and just we're just going to talk, just sit around, and just tell some stories for those guys who can't be here this weekend or the next. This weekend, there's a memorial service for Doug at Mount Pleasant, Texas. It's quite out of the way for most people. We don't expect a lot of people to our family and close friends to attend because it is very out of the way. It's a little East Texas place around where his parents live, and it's very secluded. And so we're going to be there this weekend. There's going to be a viewing and all the fun stuff along with that. Then I think his wife Linda bought some food, and we're all going to hang out at a really nice place there and just talk about Doug and do our thing. And then the weekend after that, I have invited people to come up to the warehouse here in DFW, and we are going to have a local hangout. For those who are in the area, or it's not too hard to be local, we're going to October 1st and 2nd, we're going to hang out here at the warehouse and do the same thing. Talk about Doug, tell stories about him, talk about North Texas stuff, all that good stuff. So tonight is we're just going to talk about, we're just going to talk about Doug and why you should care about who he was and what he did, even if you didn't meet him. And just if you did meet him, I feel bad for you, because it's just really one of those guys you meet during life that's a larger than life personality. And what he did is going to live on a long time. And so you're probably going to hear people talking about him for years from now.
Definitely.
And so this is going to give you a little primer on Doug. And just so, we're just going to go into how I met him. And for those of you who are inclined to also find out more, GDZ show next Monday. Goddamn it, Zach's show with Zach and Skeeter. They're going to do a show about Doug also, and it's going to have myself and his son David, Doug's son David, and then Gary Oliver, who is now basically doing what Doug did. He's helping run the con because he knows all the things that Doug used to do, and I sure as hell can't do those things Doug used to do. So thank goodness we had Gary there this year. Gary kept everything flowing along very smoothly, as Eric will attest to, and so myself, David, and Gary will be on GDZ Monday. Bill Barsh, October 1st, 2nd, both days. Some people might not make it Saturday, so we're gonna do. I'm up here most of the time anyway, so Friday and Saturday we're gonna be up here. Anyway, so I'm just gonna start telling the story. I'm gonna tell you how I met Doug and just the genesis of North Texas, because that's what led to basically, having what we love now, the North Texas RPG Con. I'm gonna have a little problem getting through some of the stuff here tonight, but so just bear with me on a couple of things, because so Doug passed Sunday night, and it wasn't unexpected at all. He'd been sick a long time, for 5 years.
He beat the odds. If you're talking about somebody who had force of will, that was Doug.
He was given, I think, when they found the colon cancer, it was stage 4 already. He was given, I think, 3 years to live. He lived 5 years. So he lived way past the point of when they said, this is probably the most time you have to expect. Did chemo twice a week the entire time, which is amazing. And think about what that does to your body and how that weakens you. But he's just a tough guy. But at the end, he just, the last couple of weeks, we saw him a couple times, and he just, wasn't getting around too well, and he was tired. He was pretty much drugged up with morphine the last couple weeks, so he wouldn't feel any pain, because the cancer had moved to his liver, and it's very painful. Liver cancer is awful, and there's no cure for it, and he was not eligible for transplant, being as that he had cancer. So, the decision was made just to go straight to hospice from there. So he was able to do that at home. So it was cool that he actually got to do that at home. He got to spend all his waking hours with his loved one and family. A bunch of his friends got to see him. Myself, I went up there. Zach, Rob, a bunch, the Barshes all went up there, and we all got to see him. A couple weeks before he died, and we had a great time. We told stories, hung out. He was very aware of what was going on, but he just, he was a little out of it because the drugs. But he participated in all the stories. He was telling stories. I made him tell all the funny Marine stories that he used to tell that I love. Some of his favorite Marine stories, actually some of my favorite Marine stories that he would tell me. And so I made him retell those. And so it was good. But Sunday night, he finally slept his whole last day, according to Gary, and then he just passed away to sleep. So, that's a pretty good way to go if you got to go, right? If you spend your last 2 weeks hanging out with your relatives and family and friends, and then, just go on your sleep while you're drugged up. I mean, I may do that one day. It's probably going to be holding a bottle of whiskey and a bottle of whiskey in one hand and a copy of copy of this and B1 Search the Unknown in the other hand, and that's how they're going to find me someday. And that's if I go that way, I'll be happy. But
that's how you get buried.
No, exactly. Oh, good idea. So anyway, So I'm gonna start by telling you that. So for those who don't know, Doug was an ex-Marine, ex-cop, grew up in Texas. He is absolutely a self-made man because he went into the Marines, like right after high school. He and his friendship. I never got the indication he did very well in school. He never went to college. He was in the Marines for a few years, and he thought, I got the Marines. Oh, what are we gonna do? Well, a lot of guys that do in the service do. They go and they join the military. They join the police. Yep. So he's a police officer in a nearby city, Bedford, for a few years, and I always love it because he was very principled. He used to tell me his stuff about police officers. And Doug was. I know most people think that most police officers are kind of yucky people, and according to Doug, even by Doug's own stories and Eric's stories, it does attract its share of a-holes, right? I mean, it just does, because you get a lot of power-hungry jerks. So he would tell me stories about that too, but I swear to God, he was one of the good ones. He eventually quit over a couple of issues, one of them being quotas. They say, oh, we need to start writing more tickets. He's like, well, what if people aren't committing crimes? Oh, you'll find them. Don't worry, you find them. He's like, I don't do that.
Good for him.
So he's principal guy. He just like, yeah, no, I'm not going to write quota tickets. That's not what officers should be spending their time doing. They need to be spending their time doing things that are important. Well, but we get judged on quota tickets. This, that. It's like, no, that's not what I do. And he was moonlighting at his job. He had another job at the time because police officers, and Eric knows this, don't get paid a lot in some places. And so he was moonlighting, and they came down with the directive and said, you can't moonlight anymore. He's like, well, you need to pay your officers more. Well, we can't really do that because of budget, this and that. So a combination of things, and I quit. So he quit that job. So what was he going to do? No college degree, whatever. He started learning about computers. This is back in the late 80s. I'm going to learn everything. He's going to learn everything he can about computers. And so he started learning about viruses and computers and hacking and just everything you can imagine. And then he basically became self-made entrepreneur and started his own business where he would do antivirus stuff on computer systems. And he had a bunch of big clients. He had the Whataburgers in North Texas were his client. I know, and they may still be his client, where he would do all their antivirus stuff. So I mean, he built this out of nothing, never went to college, whatever, and he employed about 24 people. I mean, he had a big business, so he's doing pretty well. So I'm on this collector site called the Achaeum, which is still around, and this is back in about 2007 or 8, probably 2007. And this guy pops on, and he said he's selling some white boxes, and so I noticed he's in Arlington. I was like, Arlington's close. Maybe I could just go meet him somewhere. And I was really big on meeting people at the Achaeum. It was a collector site because I'd met my friends John Lyle and John January through the Achaeum because we were all local. We thought, hey, let's all get together and hang out and stuff. And I also met Brian Quano and some other people that were local. And so I saw this other guy local pops up. He's in Arlington. I'm like, oh, cool. Well, he was selling white boxes like really cheap. And so I found this out with Doug once I got to know him. He would often buy valuable items, get them, take them home, look through them, read them, maybe run a scan of them, and then he would resell them. And sometimes it wasn't even for very much of a profit at all. Maybe if he made $10. And he would do this with stuff like tournament modules. He'd buy like a Lost Tomokan, and like he'd own it for a year or two, and then he'd go ahead and just resell it, because for the cash. So he'd buy it for like $1,000 and resell it for $1,100. He didn't care about making money. He just wanted to have it for a while, and then he wanted somebody else to have it. So he had got these 3 white boxes and bought them for like $50, and so he was selling them for like 90. I was like, oh, white box for 90. I was like, yeah, I'll take them all. And so I made arrangements with him, and I went and met him like in a parking lot somewhere in North Arlington, and he said, and while I was talking to him, he said, oh, by the way, so what do you do? He goes, oh, I do, I fix computers. I fix up computers. I do computers for companies. I do computer systems. I do antivirus stuff. So I mean, he was telling me stuff, so he goes, hey, if you have anything wrong with your computer, let me know. Like, no problem. So I got the white boxes at quite an incredible deal. Didn't think much about it. Then about a week later, lightning hit my house and blew up my computer. So If you ever had that happen, it's horrible because you just turn your computer on and it's just nothing. Like doesn't even pop up nothing. It's just
not even blue screen. You're done.
Oh yeah, you're dead. And so I'm like, well, everything was on my computer. Oh, this guy Doug I just met, he knows about computers. So I call him up and say, hey, you're not going to believe this, but this happened. No problem. Bring it over to my house. We might still be able to save it because I'm everything I'm looking up on it says you're dead. Your hard drive's gone. It's finished. Throw it in the trash. If you had anything on there, it's saved. It's no good. You're screwed. I'm like, great. So of course, like everybody else, I don't back up my computer enough, So I went ahead and I called him. He said, yeah, bring it over. So I brought it over the next day. I went to his house. First time I went to his house. Son David was there working. Jason Neff, his buddy, they're all in there. So they're in this tiny little room, and there's a big old giant server thing there. And he runs this whole business out of his house, and like this big nice house in Arlington. I'm like, oh, this is pretty cool, And he goes, yeah, let's see what I can do with it. So he fiddles with it, and so about a day later he comes back and goes, well, here's the deal. So blah blah blah. What ends up happening is he manages to pull all the data off the hard drive. I have no clue how, because I swear there was nothing on that. It was gone. He pulls all the data off there, loads it into a new hard drive, takes that new hard drive, puts it in a brand new computer, and gives me a brand new computer. This is a guy I just met like a week earlier. I'm like, well, how much do you want for this? I don't want anything for it. No, yeah, whatever. It's just, you just do it. And I'm like, yeah, but I did. And so he basically insisted, and that was a kind of a pattern with Doug. If you needed something, he just gave it to you. If you needed it, and it was within his ability, he would just give it. He would just give it to you. And yeah, it's just he's just an amazing guy. So I was like, wow, this guy's awesome. Not only did I get 3 white boxes cheap, I got a brand new freaking computer from him. And so that was kind of our start, our friendship there. So we talk back and forth, and just kind of we keep in touch. And he was in Arlington, and so he started inviting me over for stuff. He's like, hey, we're gonna have a pool party. You want to come over? I'm like, yeah, I guess. I don't really know this guy very well, but I'll go over there. So we could go there, hang out, and he just a great guy. He would always want to pay for everything. Always wanted to take you to lunch, just do stuff. And so I ended up I went to Gen Con for the first time in 2007. I went 2007, 2008. Haven't been back since. And I had the greatest time there. But I would come back and I'd tell Doug, like, I had so much fun, but really I didn't sign up for any games. I had fun just seeing people there. I was telling, like, I got to meet Frank Menser there. I got to meet Tim Cass, got to meet, Rob Kuntz. I was telling all these people I met. So it was just really cool. I got to hang out. I said, I'd love to have a convention like that, but, just, smaller though, because all I did was hang out with people I already knew, like Bill Barsh and Mark Greenberg and all those guys. That's all I did was hang out with them. I didn't really join any games, but I had had the best time. And so that got him thinking. So he's like, so one day, I want to say it's about 2008, he invited a bunch of local people that all played games that belonged to the camp. He invited them over to his house. And if you ever knew Doug, he was a great host. That's one of the things about an amazing host. So you go over there, there's a margarita machine, there's a giant grill there, and he's just making like every kind of meat, whatever, sausage, hot dogs, hamburgers, just anything, chicken. And he's like the center of everything. He's doing everything. He's probably got a keg there and everything. Of course, the pool, and I'm just thinking and we had a great time. There was probably about, I don't know, like 10 of us there or something, but it's just people in the area. And then so this got him thinking. He's thinking, wouldn't it be cool? We could do our own convention. I'm thinking, yeah, maybe. And I've been going to conventions since like 1980. I went to a lot of comic book conventions. I went to game conventions. So I'd been to a lot of conventions for that. Doug had never been to a convention, or he'd never been to a gaming comic / convention. And so I was like, well, if we want to do it, let's do this and that. So we both kind of brainstormed, and we thought, if we're going to run a convention, we're going to do it the way we want to do it. And here's what we always want out of conventions. And I would tell him, like, one thing I hate is when you go to a convention, it's so loud and it's cramped. Because Gen Con, there's a lot of rooms that are just crammed full of tables and people, and you cannot hear yourself think. He said, no, we're not going to do that. We're not going to do that. Everybody's going to be spaced out. And we're going to do this. And so we had all these ideas. Yeah, let's do this. So we talked about this all through 2008. And we just kind of, we were just doing all talk. We were all talk, right? No, we didn't have any plans to do anything, to actually make anything happen at the time. And so, but I said, hey, I got to know these guys, the Con, Frank and Tim and this and that, whatever. And says, oh, I need to call them up and get in touch with them. I'm like, yeah, we'll do that. So I just kind of not really paying attention. But Doug apparently really wanted to do this thing, because so all of a sudden, February of 2009, he calls me and goes, hey, are we going to have this convention this year or not? I'm like, oh, we're doing it this year? He's like, well, why not? I thought we were going to do it. I was like, oh, well, it's February. And when do you want to do this convention? He's like, well, we have to do it like the first. We was like, when is a good time to do it? Well, if we do it this week, that's when people are graduating. This end of May. Let's do it the first week of June, which has been our day ever since. We've always done it the first Thursday in June. Doug was always very specific about that, first Thursday in June, which is not always the first weekend, but most of the time it is. And so I'm like, well, we're just going to throw this thing together because we have literally 2 months to prepare for it. So he gets on the phone. And so I thought, well, here's what we'll do. We'll have local guests the first year, because obviously we can't call any big names to get them here. So I'm looking like, okay, well, Janelle Jaquays lives nearby. Steve Marsh lives nearby. Somebody had told me, like, Dennis Astaire, who I didn't know. They said Dennis Astaire lives in Austin, and he's got Jaquays and Burrow. It's like, oh, that's pretty cool. So I'm just looking at all these kind of local names. Jason Braun, the artist, he was in San Antonio at the time, and I got in touch with him about a year earlier, so I knew Jason. And so I'm thinking, okay, yeah, we got enough people. I mean, not big names. And then Matt Finch. Matt Finch is in Houston. I knew Swords and Wizardry had just started up. Swords and Wizardry Mythmere games had come out. I'm like, okay, I think I can get this guy Matt Finch to come too. So I'm looking at, okay, we'll just get local people. We're not going to get too crazy here because we don't really know whatever. Then Doug changed the whole thing and turned it on its head because Doug, he's not afraid of anybody. He wasn't scared of anybody. He didn't care. So he gets the phone. I don't know how he finds people. He found Tim Kask and Frank Mincer and Rob Kuntz, and calls and says, "Hey, would you like to go to a convention in DFW, our first year convention? It's going to be free." Oh, that's the other thing we decided too. So Doug said, "Well, since it's so late in the year, we'll just make the whole convention free. Nobody will pay to get in because there's no way people are going to be able to." And so like, that's a pretty good shtick, So first year convention, it's all free. And I'm like, oh, that's pretty cool. Okay, then we're not going to make any money or 1 cent, which I soon found out about Doug was not important at all. I'm like, okay, we won't make any money, but that's kind of a good little shtick for the first year. Get in for free, and people kind of get, interested in it, and then they'll come back. So he calls him up and says, "Hey, I'll pay your way down here and pay for a hotel room. Would you come down for a convention?" Well, of course they will, because most of these guys like, yeah, give us a free room and food, and we're there.
Well, you're saying these guys literally work for food?
Well, yes, pretty much.
Okay. All right.
Or in a hotel room. Food.
Sounds like the homeless in New York City. I'm just making sure.
So he tells me one day, he goes, "Yeah, I got Frank Mincer, Tim Kask, and Rob Kuntz coming to our con." I'm like, what? And so that first year con, we had 55 people. We had Frank Mincer, Tim Kask, Rob Kuntz. We also had Dennis Astaire and Janelle Jaquays. Steve Marsh could not make it that year. He was local and he really wanted to come, couldn't. But yeah, that's a pretty salty lineup. And then Jason Braun did come in too. Jason Braun also did our first emblem. And so it was wild because this just came out of Doug made this all happen like in 1 month. Like he had all these people and so suddenly people were like, "Whoa, you got who coming to your little tiny con?" And and so it was great because these are people that don't make it to Texas. I'm sorry. Rob Kuntz, Tim Kask, and Frank Mincer had never been to Texas for a con because nobody would even have thought to call them for that. And there wasn't any old school cons back then because that's what we decided we were going to concentrate on old school games. We also decided that there's too many cons out there right now or at the time that did war games, war games. I mean, like BattleTech and Warhammer, and they did card games and stuff like that. And we said, we don't want to be like other cons. We're going to have role-playing games only, which was weird at the time because obviously everybody was doing, because to get more people in your con, what would you do? You'd have Magic tournaments. Everybody had Magic tournaments.
Right.
Everybody had BattleTech tournaments. Everybody had Warhammer tournaments. Everybody did that. But he was like, no, we're not going to do that. Okay, that's cool. I like that. We're going to do something a little different. We're going to have, and it's probably going to be just at the time we were only going to have old school games that were pre-2000. Now as time went on, because at that first convention, his son ran a 3E game, and now as time goes on, we'll run pretty much anything. We have probably as many 5th edition games as we have, early games at this point. So we were just kind of doing something different, it was kind of weird. So we had this convention. And we had 55 people show up, and it was one of those things. I always remember when there was a guy who reviewed the Velvet Underground when they came out, or actually wrote a book about the Velvet Underground years later. And he said, none of their albums sold very good. I mean, because if you look at their albums, this is the old band, Lou Reed started out in, and just nothing of theirs are sold, but everybody who bought a record formed their own band. And that was a good point because it's true because they've influenced so many bands. Well, that was the same thing with this. We only had 55 people there, but everybody there told all their friends about it and said, "This is the best con ever." It was so cool. It was free. And then in the middle of the con, Saturday, Doug invited everybody to his house for a barbecue. So he catered a barbecue there, got a bus, hired a bus, and had everybody jump on the bus and drive the bus over to his place for a barbecue. Nobody does any of this. Eric, does anybody do any of this? I'm saying,
God, no.
Nobody does this. And then Sunday, we all got up because he still had the bus for hire, and we all drove to Reaper and had a tour of the Reaper place, the Reaper facilities. I mean, so it was the craziest con ever because this guy didn't know what the rules were. And the rules were you don't do things like this. He didn't know that.
We didn't care. It's not so much that he didn't necessarily know. He didn't care, but he did what he wanted to do. He thought it was right and thought it was going to work.
And he just wanted to. He wanted to do what he wanted to do. Now, Marshall's putting on there. So when I was buying from Mike on eBay, he hit me up for the first con. That what Marshall says is true. What I was trying to dig up people to come to the con. I think I messaged everybody that bought from me on the KM and eBay. Said, "Look, we're having this con. Can you come to town?" Because I'm thinking nobody's going to show up. It's like 2 months to the con, and usually you have to plan these things far in advance. But we got quite a few people that either still show up. Bill Barsh is one of them. Bill, I remember he drove from, I think, Florida. I think at the time he was at a job in Florida, and he drove over to come to the con. Obviously, Marshall came. They both come to all of our cons. Robert missed our first con. I don't know why. I think Robert was.
He said you didn't invite him.
He was in prison.
How dare you didn't tell him?
I didn't invite him.
You were running a con.
I don't know. I probably didn't. I probably didn't tell him. I don't know. So Robert didn't come. He probably wouldn't have come anyway, but maybe he did. So anyway, I'm having some major issues with my computer here. I'm not kidding.
These are the pop-ups.
All right, let's work past the pop-ups. Anyway, so we did the con that year. It was a great time. And then we're already thinking ahead. I mean, we had a lot of crazy stuff that first year. He called Goodman Games up, or he called a bunch of people up and said they wanted to sponsor us. Well, Goodman Games is a special NTRPG Con version of Tomb of the Blind God, which is one of their adventures. And so we had 100 copies of that. I mean, we had those for years. We were still selling them, I think, to like 2 years ago.
Really?
Yes. So but we had those. I mean, he just did. I don't know if we had. I think we had T-shirt. We did T-shirts because Liz and Mike Stewart had T-shirts. They wore T-shirts that year. Now Liz and Mike came that first year. That was the first time I ever met them, which is awesome. And they've come to every one of our cons since then. Also, it was. I met a lot of people that first year. I didn't really know Mike Carey and Jim Johnson came. Sadly, Mike passed away a couple years ago, but Jim's been to all our cons. So it was kind of the beginning of just something, really cool. And we sold candy and soft drinks, and we had this little tiny room with the La Quinta Inn, just kind of over by my house. And looking back on it, I think we chose it because it's close to DFW Airport. We wanted there to be shuttle service back and forth to the airport, right? So, and that was one thing that we always looked at too. Is like, okay, we have to have these certain things. One of the things we always had was we want to have shuttle service to the airport. We don't want to have people have to drive very far or not be able to get back and forth to the airport. So we had already planned all these things. Like, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. And it all worked out pretty good that first year, but we're sitting there going, we can do this so much better. And so the first thing Doug said was we need a bigger spot, because this one place we had was this one meeting room, and we had like 4 or 5 tables set up there. Now, if you went to our 10th anniversary convention, we went back to La Quinta to have games there, and it was pretty fun. I think we had Tim running a game there. We had some of the same people. We had Tim running a game there like he did before. I think Alan Groh did also. But it was, you could see how small it was. And that was a great convention, because we went to this event we had where we bussed people over, and we rented out the room at La Quinta for the 10th anniversary, and we had set up games there and everything. And there's this point where just everybody's running games. Doug and I just kind of look at each other like, man, this is so wild. This is where we started out. This is where we had our first year convention, and look how we've outgrown it. And now we're at an actual big hotel. I mean, it was kind of a cool moment. Like just sit there and go, wow, this is amazing. But at the time, we thought we were king shit, just being in this La Quinta,
right.
La Quinta party room or whatever it was. And it was pretty crowded. There was a closet where they stored tables that was inside the room. We had games in that closet. There's actual pictures. I think Bill's post them online for the people, Bill Barsh, where we could just fit a table in there. You could just squeeze by, and the DM was in the corner. And we ran a game in the closet, because you could fit the table in the closet, people in the closet. So, that's just kind of everything that there is to say about Doug. You can say about that. I mean, he just saw something he wanted to do, and he did it, but he didn't just do it, because I was not planning on anything this grandiose. I was going to settle for, we can have 2 guests and this, and we're going to do whatever. And he was not going to settle for it. He's like, no, we're going to call up Tim Kask and Frank Menzer and Rob Kuntz, and we're going to do this. And he always thought really big. And that's one thing about his personality. He was larger than life. He was never scared to pick up the phone and call anyone, and I mean anyone. Because over the years, the list of guests we had at our conventions is just insane. I mean, he called Larry Elmore. Why would Larry Elmore come to our convention in this little, 400 person convention in the middle of Texas? He got Larry to come, and not only that, Larry invited his friends Margaret Weiss and Tracy Hickman. I mean, just and over the years he's called everybody. I mean, some people haven't come. I mean, and he would call some people, every year to say, "Hey, would you like to come?" Like, no, maybe in the future. But pretty much at some point, everybody he called would come, and so that's why we've had such an amazing list of guests over the year,
Yes.
because he was never afraid to call anyone, and he's called a lot of people that have never come. I mean, like guys like Clyde Caldwell and guys like that they just for one reason or another just can't make it to the con. Ed Greenwood, he's big names. He calls everybody and says, "Hey, would you like to come? And here's our deal, and we pay for everything and this and that." And so it was. He never thought of ourselves as a small con, even though we were a small con, and we basically cap it at 500 people because that's what we want. We don't want to be a giant everything con. We want to be this small, kind of cool, exclusive, kick-ass con. We cap it at 500 because that's what we can handle. Because another thing he always said was I always would get mad at him because I say, we need more people working this con. We're doing too much. We should be having more fun at our con. Because the first years, all we did was work our ass off, Doug and I. And I would run a booth too. And my grandkids at that point were too young to run the booth. So I was having to run the booth. And between Doug and I running around, we were just so busy. I finally said, don't we deserve to enjoy our own con and have a break? Because this is a guy that would go by, 2 or 3 days without sleep. That never bothered him. Just an incredible constitution. And I said, why can't we let's just hire somebody. People work for free if you just give them admission. And this thing goes, no, this con's about family. This is our family here. I only want our families and friends to be working here. And that's why to this day, that's why my brother works here and and then Gary Oliver and then David. It's because he didn't want random people. Every once in a while we'd let a random person in, like Chris Fuller, who you've probably seen him run around the con. He changes, his specific job is to change all the game things on the game stand-ups. Because he asked to do it. And one year, Jonathan Perkle was taking pictures. He said, "Hey, you want to be the official photographer of the con?" And Jonathan was like, "Yeah." And so he made him the official photographer of the con that one year. I mean, just things like that. But he was very, very big on this is a family affair. And so I don't want outside people working at the con, people we don't know, people that are working just for pay, that are mercenaries. I want this to be our con. And it's going to be our family. And he envisioned like someday our grandkids are going to be working at this con, and this is all going to be about family. And so that was pretty amazing. That stuck with me too. The fact that he I wanted the easy way. I was like, look, let's just hire some people or just get some volunteers. Nope, wasn't about that.
And once he accepted you, like Zach, once you were in, or you were done. I mean, you're not going to be released. It's a lifetime obligation.
Yeah, and Zach came to his first con in our fourth con was his first con for the disastrous Holiday Inn Con. Well, after the first year, we went to a place called Staybridge Fish for 2 years. Great place. We outgrew it very quickly, but that was probably one of the nicest places we had the con at. That's where we met Bill Webb, who came our third year, I believe, and loved it so much he went insane because this is the way he remembered cons as being. And so that's what he said. From now on, the Frog God Games annual stockholders meeting is always going to be in North Texas. And it was up until COVID. Unfortunately, COVID derailed that. But so we met Bill Webb, and then because Matt Finch told Bill Webb, "You're going to love this con. You need to come to this con." Bill Webb didn't do cons. Well, you're going to love this con. So he went and he loved it. I mean, very rarely do we have somebody that comes to the con that doesn't love it. I remember, I think it was our third con. We had a guy come that really didn't like our con and kind of gave it a really bad review online. And everything he said wasn't untrue. It was just that I think he was expecting too much. And that was really the only time I ever saw somebody write really negatively about our con. But he wasn't wrong on a lot of things he said. I will say that. One of the problems was he went into a game run by Robert Kuntz, and Rob Kuntz can be either amazing or absolutely incredibly can make you angry playing a game because he does not. I don't know how I should put it. He doesn't run very traditional games, and you have to really think out of the side of the box in one of Rob's games. And he ran this impenetrable game that where literally everybody was sitting around for 3 hours trying to figure out where to go next, type of thing. And so he played in that game. He didn't like the food at the restaurant, which wasn't that good, I will admit. And there's a couple other things he didn't really like. And so, that was the only time I really ever saw somebody write something negative about it. But once I talked to him, I realized that he wasn't wrong in his assessment. He just really got pretty unlucky about all the games he played in that weekend. He really just was not very lucky because it was never your traditional kind of con. It's the kind of con you just go to and hang out and talk to people and maybe go check out the dealer room and just try different stuff. And I think he was looking for a more traditional con experience, which this is not. This is not your traditional con experience. But other than that, everybody that comes, we usually always have them back. We lose a few people over the years that we used to have come all the time, but people come back year and year again, and then they always talk about the con, about how great it is. You can talk to these special guests, but it was because of Doug. This is all because Doug set it up this way. There's a reason we have 30 special guests at a con of 500 people, which is insane. There's no cons just don't do that. They don't have 10% of their attendees or special guests, but that's what he wanted. He wanted there to be a lot of special guests. He wanted everywhere for you to turn, there to be somebody that you know. And one of his favorite stories ever was, and I can't remember, God, he just told this the last time I saw him, was when we were somebody was at a game. They said their favorite person, he said, who would you like to meet old school D&D? He said, well, somebody, and then Errol Otis. Those are my two favorite people. He's like, well, they're at this con, you might meet them. And I can't remember who the guy was. And later on, that same guy's playing in a game, and he's sitting next to Errol Otis. And he doesn't know. And so he's telling somebody else at the table, like, yeah, and this guy Doug said who I asked who my favorite people were. And I said, this guy and Errol Otis. He said, Errol Otis at the con. The guy said, he's sitting right next to you right there. And so Doug loves stuff like that. He loved hearing stories like that, where people would go to the con and meet up with, their heroes, or just hang out and talk to them, or take them to dinner, or do whatever. That he loved the idea that people would come to the con, and they would make deals, or they would get there and be so inspired by the con they want to create their own game. And that was Zach Glazer. Zach Glazer came to our fourth year, just had gotten back into D&D after a long layoff. And he loved it. Just had the best time ever. And Zach was going to a lot of cons at the time, but he just really felt attracted to North Texas. And for some reason, he and Doug hit it off. And Doug said, you're going to be a permanent volunteer at the con, but I'm never going to make you a special guest, which is an inside joke forever between us. It's always been an inside joke that Zach is never going to be a special guest at our con. And because he's considered to be an employee of the con. But if you understand Doug, you understand how high that praise is, right, Derek? I mean, that is the highest praise he could have given Zach, with the fact that he made him an employee of the con, and not, and said, you're never going to be special guest, but Zach will always be at the con, because that's what he wanted, because that's how much he liked Zach. And if he liked you, like you said, Eric, you were in. You're in forever. Like Jason Braun. Love Jason Braun. Jason Braun will never have to pay for another con ever, because he did as far as Doug was concerned, he did our first two logos. That put him in. He's in the bank. And Jason would always complain about that. He goes, I don't even do any more art for you, and I don't do this, and I don't really do a lot of fantasy art anymore. Doug didn't care. It's like, it doesn't matter. You're in. You did the first two logos. That means you're in forever. Like the mafia, the family. You're part of the family. You're not getting out of the family. And that's the way he was. I don't know where I was going after that. Well, anyway, so let's go ahead to when the first year Eric was at the con. Well, now I think I want to say it was year 5 or 6, probably 6.
I think so. Zach had a table that year.
I'm sorry. I know where I was going. Where I was going was, look at Zach. One of the reasons he flew into town to see Doug before Doug passed was that he wanted to tell him what an incredible effect Doug had on his life, because he went from just some guy that was managing apartment buildings to writing his own. One thing he always dreamed of his whole life, writing his own D&D box set, Whisper and Venom, and then the follow-up, Death and Taxes. And going to all these cons, meeting all these people, and then working for Fraud God Games, being pretty much the second in command of Fraud God Games, and this is all because of Doug and because of Doug Thon. So that's where I was going with that. I'm sorry, but it was because. And so many people have that story. Like, yeah, I came to your con and I saw something about games. And I talked to this guy and this guy, and this guy. And I thought I got home, I could do this, and then boom, next thing you know, Lloyd Metcalf had his own stuff, and all these guys have their own companies, and it's all because, or not all, but a lot was because they went to North Texas and they got hooked up with the right people, and they were inspired by what was going on in North Texas. A bunch of smaller dealers and a bunch of smaller publishers there.
North Texas is the place where, and I saw this right from my first con, was the place where publishers and freelancers and creators were able to meet, and no pretensions, just relaxed and over I don't know, over breakfast, work out deals that you weren't going to have at larger cons because there was no pressure. I mean, again, my first con, oh my god, I think it was, I don't know, 2014, 2015, somewhere around then. I was supposed to go with Joe the lawyer, but Joe couldn't make it financially. So then Rach was like, well, we never had a real honeymoon. And go figure, Rach decided that North Texas RPG Con was going to be our faux honeymoon. And I told the story. We wound up going to the wrong hotel from the airport because north and south. And when I saw the marble floors, I was like, we're in the wrong hotel. But get to the right hotel. Rach is having a blast. And it was either that first night or the second night, either Thursday or Friday night. We're in a hotel bar and drinking beer and eating these wonderful pretzels they had. And Doug comes over, larger than life. His personality was always larger than life. And he just sits down with us and goes, how are you enjoying the convention? How are you enjoying the con? And Rachel's just glowing. She's like, oh, I'm having a great time. It's amazing. Because she went with the idea of, I'm going to go shopping in Dallas. I'm somehow going to get a bus, mass transit, and go into town, as opposed to hanging out at the convention. And instead, she had an amazing time with gamers and gaming. And Doug read it, and he just sat down with us for about half an hour, and just bullshitted. And it was like, "Oh, I'm so glad you guys came here. Where you from? Oh, New York. Oh, wow." And of course, Rachel's like, "Oh, well, you know, Eric's a cop." And me and Doug talked a little shop. But it was just so real and relaxed. And then he's like, all right, well, I got other people I got to talk to. And he made the point of talking to some other newcomers. It was their first time at North Texas. And sat down and spent about 20, 25 minutes with them, asking them about what they were doing, what were they enjoying. Was there anything that they thought maybe should get, changed for next year? He was very in tune with what was going on. And that's a rarity in all this stuff. So
yeah, he was definitely a people.
Oh, Mike, you're muted. Mike, I don't know. Did you try to kill a pop-up? Did the pop-up kill you? You're still muted. Michael, can you hear a number? As Mike goes through technical difficulties, Michael, can you hear me? Can you hear us calling? See, this is Doug's revenge from the grave. Doug is making sure that Mike can't talk because computer viruses are apparently screwing with his computer. Next, we'll see Mike shake his fist in anger. Mike, can you even hear me telling you that you can't talk? Or are we...
Okay, there we go. Can you hear me now? Go. Okay. There's a button that's called unmute.
Oh,
this is the bottom.
That's optional.
Yeah, I never know what that does. So, no, I'm sorry. I had to take a little bathroom break there, and so I muted it because I don't want to hear me flush the toilet or anything.
Well, that would have been interesting.
What was I going to say? Oh, I was saying that you were talking about Doug. He was. there's a lot of things he did that was very unconventional. And you were talking about how, I mean, I'll say one of the things why he was so warm and great with people is because that's part of his business, was schmoozing other businesses to get business. So
Right.
part of his real business was talking to business owners all the time, and he had a real good old boy, thing going. He just the nicest guy. Like I said, pay for everything, do everything, whatever you need, I'm going to give it to you. So yeah, he really resonated with a lot of people. We had bumped heads a lot of times, because I would always tell Doug, I was like, Doug. So the first convention Doug ever went to was North Texas first convention, 2009. He'd never been to a convention, didn't know what conventions were like. And so I had to try to tell him, like, well, you can't do that at a convention, or that's not good to get a convention. You can do that at a convention. And there's some things he did that I would just like, okay, you just got to find out for yourself. And there's some things he would do it would turn out great. Like, okay, well, I guess I was wrong. So that was always a point of contention with us. And now he finally started going to conventions, though, because he went to Gamehole Con, never went to Gary Con. He went to the Long Con. So he actually went to some conventions at a certain point, and he would see how, okay, they're doing it this way. And he always came back and said, well, they're doing it wrong. We're doing it right. That was always his contentious that, yeah, they did it this way, but I don't like it that way. He liked our convention better than any other convention, which is cool. I mean, he always thought ours was the best run convention there was, which that was, and that was a lot of it was because of what he did and, what he was willing to do. And one of the things that he was willing to do was to lose money every year and not really make money. And I remember one year we broke even and he was mad because he said, well, that means I didn't spend enough money on the con.
Oh, shit.
It's like, what? No, it means it finally was managed well and we actually made money how we were supposed to. Like, no, it means that we didn't spend enough money. Because he looked at it this way. He said, I take a big vacation a year and it costs this much money. So he would bring his wife Linda. Said, we always go to vacation. We'll go to Italy. We'll do this. We'll do that. And I always spend this much amount of money. So if I can have a con every year, that's my week. That's my vacation. So I think I should be able to spend that much money on myself too. And so that was what he always went by. So he was never put himself on a budget or, said, well, we can't do that. It's going to be too expensive. That was never, ever his, the way he would do things. He always said, nope, we're just going to do whatever it takes to get this done. I have a feeling I know the virus that's on my computer, Eric. I keep getting Norton antivirus renewal things. So somehow Norton antivirus has invaded my computer with pop-ups.
Oh.
And for those of you know,
your antivirus is expired, so we're the
motherfucker Norton antivirus.
We're the virus for you.
Those assholes. So I somehow clicked the Norton antivirus ad, and now it's all over my computer. So I keep getting Norton antivirus things. So fuck you, Norton. Anyway, so I mean, I don't know. I can tell you. I mean, there's so many stories about the guy, and the stories usually either center on the fact of how generous he was. He would just do the most amazing things. I remember one year, Michael Curtis, who of the Dungeon Alphabet and Stonehill Dungeon, now works for Goodman Games. I remember one year, his computer died, and he was using this is like one of the greatest RPG writers we have going right now, and he was using like a beat up computer that was held together by spit and tape and baling wire, and so his computer died. And so he put out like a GoFundMe type thing that said, hey, I need to buy another computer. I mean, can you guys, I need about this much money. Can you guys donate some money towards me? And he was offering like I'll give you like a manuscript, or I'll do this or that. I mean, he had like a couple different, I'll write an adventure for you, blah, blah, blah. And so I went to lunch with Doug that day, and I was saying, yeah, I don't know if you know Michael Curtis, this and that. And he said, well, how much does he need? I don't know, like $700. Done. Got on there, gave Michael the money he needed to buy the computer. Said, here, you don't have to worry about this GoFundMe. And his logic was, this guy is a creative genius. He needs to have a computer. And, and he knew who he was because he'd done Stonehill Dungeon, which is Dungeon Alphabet was our first year 3 Casts Award winner. And so he knew who Michael Curtis was. And he said, this guy needs to have a computer. He can't not have a computer. So Michael Curtis that day had to say, well, I just had somebody buy me a computer, so contest is off or whatever. But that's how we got the adventure Stonehill Dungeon Laser Massacre. because that was one of the that was the adventure that he gave Doug for helping him out buying the computer. So
Wow.
stories like that. There's so many stories like that, and a lot of the guys, I can't tell you because I'm not going to tell you how many old school guys called Doug up and said, "I need money," and Doug was like, "How much?" And that was it. No payback, no whatever. I'm having some problems. I'm having medical issues. I'm having this or that. Doug just sent him money. I think he supported Rob Kuntz for at least 2 years because Rob Kuntz went through some really rough times for 2 or 3 years. And what Doug would do is buy stuff from him. He'd say, Rob would say, I really need money. He's like, okay, well, how much you need? This much. Okay, why don't you send us some stuff and I'll just say that's what I bought. I bought that from you, and then I'll give you the money. And so Rob Kuntz hit us up for lots of money. But we have lots of Rob Kuntz stuff laying around somewhere. Somewhere there's Rob Kuntz stuff in the warehouse. But that was Jim Ward. Jim Ward needed money right after he'd had his medical issues. Doug bought 4 different digests from him. Those we published all 4 of those digests one year. So yeah, that was his way of helping these guys out. It's like, okay, you need some money. Well, do a digest, and I'll give you, $1,000 or whatever. He gave him $1,000 for the digest. Now, let me crunch the numbers for you. So we did these digests. We did them print runs. I don't know why Doug decided to limit them to 100. He just did. This part of Doug's personality. For some reason, he wouldn't sell T-shirts after March 15th.
Oh, that's right.
I don't know why. He had these really crazy idiosyncrasies. But he'd only print like 100 copies of every module we make. Because his thing was, well, I don't want to get stuck with them. Like, we're not stuck with them. We can sell them forever and ever and ever. But he just like, I'll do it this way. So he would buy 100 copies. He'd say, okay, 100 copies. So he'd pay the guy, I think he'd pay him like $500. Then we charge $10 or $20 a module for 100 copies. But wait! So we paid $500 out. That means we only have $500 now, right? Printing the modules cost a couple $100. So we weren't making a lot of money on these digests. No. We're making like $3 a digest when all boils down. Now, I will be happy to say that Doug got out of the digest business about 3 or 4 years ago, and we've done really well with the X 1.5 and B 2.5 that we did, and then also Night of the Walking Wet, Reloaded, some of the other stuff we did. The later ones I was in charge of, and I actually care about making money. Doug didn't care about it. So the last few years we've done very well with our modules. This year, the module is written by Tom Wilson and the beautiful cover by Matt Roberts. That was actually donated 100%, so we didn't have to pay for it. So every 100 copies regular, and then 50 of the special cover at $10 a piece. We're actually going to make money off that. So we actually make money now off our digest. But there was a time when Doug just gave away the farm. It was because it wasn't important to him. It did. Right. Making the money for the con didn't matter. That wasn't something he was ever worried about or ever cared about.
Like you said, that for him, that was his vacation. That was his reward to himself for a year of hard work. That was for him.
Right.
And giving back to the community. He was always somebody to give back. I mean, if you didn't know Doug and you met him for the first time, you'd be like, who's this intimidating mother effer? Holy sh! If this guy could pound my ass. Really. If you didn't know him. And then you talk to him, he's a teddy bear. But you didn't, you wouldn't know that until you got to know him. So I could see him being a very effective cop because he would be intimidating to come up on you in a car stop after you went through a red light and be like, yeah, he'd get voluntary compliance right away. No, nobody would resist Doug. Come on.
Well, Doug was, I'll tell you what, the stories are true. He was a super nice police officer. He let people off a lot. He gave benefit of the doubt. One of his favorite stories he ever told was pulled over a guy driving erratically, and he was talking to him, and they basically worked it out. Go home and don't get your whatever renewed, and drive slower and whatever. And this other cop, who he said was kind of a Billy Badass cop, I'm sure you ran into those guys when you were in the New York, that thought they were hot shit. Well, he heard this call come over, so he had to zip on over there, even though it was just a speeding call. And Doug says he swaggers up there like, what we got here? And he was like technically kind of Doug's superior. And Doug's like, well, I've already done everything. And so this cop proceeds to get into it with the driver to the point where the cop ends up arresting the driver. And then they're getting into it. And Doug's like, I'm out of here. This is
yours now.
I had already done this and taken care of it. It was okay. So the next day he gets called in the captain's office. He says, I noticed on this report, it is this huge stink after it, huge stink. And Doug was like, I had everything in hand before Billy Badass got here and did this. He goes, so as far as I'm concerned, I left because I was not part of that arresting where that guy made it all about him. It was all about him antagonizing the driver, getting into a fight with the driver, not a fight, but a verbal argument, and then arresting the driver. And he went like nothing, none of that should have happened. That absolutely should never have happened. And the captain said, oh, well, your name's not on the arrest report. He was like, I didn't arrest the guy. I didn't want to arrest the guy. And so, it was all about this other guy. So Doug was very good at dealing with people in that situation. And it's really sad that more people like Doug aren't, or like yourself, Eric, aren't police officers. It really is sad because honestly, I remember, and this story probably a lot of you don't know, but when the George Floyd thing happened last year, I was on a TV watching the thing with Doug, and all Doug was doing was absolutely excoriating the officer that arrested George Floyd for everything he was doing wrong at the time. It's like, well, he's doing this wrong. Well, he's doing this over here. Well, he's kneeling on his neck, and he was going on and on. Like, because this guy, and he basically said, this guy shouldn't be a cop. This guy is, Chavez, the guy eventually got put in jail for 20 years because George Floyd passed away. I mean, he was like, it wasn't like, oh, I'm a guy in blue, I got to take up for the cop. No, he was going, this guy is trained terribly. He's doing this wrong. He's doing this wrong. I mean, he got to the point where he goes, if I was there right now, I'd run over there and tackle that cop. And I'm like, oh, you probably get shot. He goes, well, no, because I'm white, I wouldn't get shot. So he was very aware of how things worked. He said, but the worst that would happen to me is I'd get arrested, and guess what? That guy would still be alive. But I'd be arrested. But he goes, but I bet you anything I could get out of jail after that. And I was like, well, that's pretty.
Into the real world too much, but it was horrible. It was horrible training. I mean, was the cop following his training? Yeah. It doesn't mean that the training was good training. Right. The NYPD used to have horrible training when it came to chokeholds. Before I came on the job, and the cop choked somebody out to the point that he was deceased, and then the NYPD had to go, oh, I guess our training is screwed up. Yeah, you know what? Your training is screwed up. Didn't mean that the cop should have done what he did, but falling back on that's how I was trained, it sucks. Again, real life. I hate to be a Monday morning quarterback, but that whole incident went down horribly on so many levels.
And Doug was, like I said, he was very well aware of that, and he was just like, Doug was huge on training for cops, and he would talk about how when he would do something, he went into detail one time about the proper procedure for pulling somebody over. There was another case that was really big. It was the guy. So you probably remember this, Eric. There was a guy that pulled over a couple, and there had been a suspect in the area that had robbed a bank. But it wasn't this couple, and they had a kid in the back seat too. And while he's questioning the driver reaches for his wallet, and the guy pumps like 6 shots into him, the cop, and said that he was scared because he thought he smelled marijuana. He thought the guy was going for a gun, but the guy was just going for his wallet. There was a kid in the back seat. I mean, it was a horrible thing. Right. I don't remember what city this happened in. And Doug went through me step by step about every single thing this guy did wrong per training. He said, first of all, he's pulling over a violent felon. That means you call for another officer. Yep. Number one, you never confront a violent felon. And then number two, he approached from the wrong side of the vehicle. You should always do that, because I think he shot over the woman. It was crazy what he did. And number three, he did, everything he did. He was just so meticulous. And he hadn't been a cop at this point for 30 years. He still knew every bit of training about exactly how this guy fucked this thing up and how he should have done the arrest.
Good police training is like muscle memory. You will not forget it. And that's part of the problem when they change procedures that you have had ingrained into you in the academy, and all of a sudden you have to get it uningrained. But yeah, sure. Remember, I spent my time in internal affairs on the way out, and I've seen a hell of a lot of this stuff, and I've watched a lot of, especially at the end.
Yeah.
I got to see body camera, footage before it went anywhere beyond my intake desk. And it was just like,
Right. Right. Well, so to relate that to the con, Doug, meticulous as he was about the cop training and how he gets so mad that cops wouldn't follow their training, that he was that about the con too, because to him, I mean, he was very meticulous about everything he did in the con. Very rarely did we ever have anything go wrong. Now, stuff would go wrong, but it was usually outside forces at work. It wasn't because we screwed up anything, because Doug was very meticulous about everything. He brought everybody's shirts, he brought everybody's, he had all the backpacks. I mean, everything. This is all Doug did this all himself. He would make sure everything was ready to go before the con, and he handled all the money stuff, all he would enter all the products into the computer. I mean, this is all stuff he did himself. And I would say a lot of it was he didn't trust us, Gary and I and David, but also because he was one of those people who was very hands-on about his
right.
life. Excuse me. He didn't, unless he did it himself, he always had issues about, whether or not something could get done. It takes a while to gain Doug's trust about stuff. I remember Doug was notoriously terrible at writing copy or writing. So he told me that he goes, "You can do that. You're an English major. You write this stuff, because I can't write it." Because all he wanted to do when he wrote something was just put down the facts, ma'am. Here's what you do. You put in this. He was the kind of guy for a program when it came to somebody's what they did. He just wanted to cut and paste it off of Wikipedia. There it is. And I said, no, we can't do that. We can make it sound really good. And so I'd write it. And he goes, yeah, you made it sound really good. This is what you do this. I don't want to do this anymore. You do this. So he knew when somebody couldn't do something, but it was really hard to get him to realize that sometimes. I mean, sometimes it took a while before, like the auction. The auction was one thing he let me do. And it was so funny. He very slowly came to like the auction, because he didn't understand auctions, I don't think, because he's the kind of person at auction just shouts out $5,000 and gets it right. He doesn't like all the build up and the give and take and all the mental things that go on. You have to stare at your opponent and stuff. He didn't get into that. He's just like, just pay the most amount you'd never pay, and then you don't have to worry about this guy buying it. But he eventually came to where he liked the auction, I think. And I'd always do the auction Saturday. You'd see him up there beside me. He'd always be laughing and having a great time, right? I mean, he got to where he really enjoyed the auction. He really got to where he loved the midnight auction. The midnight auction was a funny story, because that was something that I'd always had in my mind I wanted to do, but I wasn't sure how to do it, because I know Doug would never want to schedule that during the auction, during the regular stuff. And so I just one day I said, I want to do this little thing. It's going to be at midnight. And so I was trying to, this and that. And he's like, yeah, let's do it. And so I was so shocked, because Doug was not like that. He was always like, well, I don't know what this thing is. I don't know what you're talking about. But for some reason, and I asked him years later, I said, why did you ever let me do the midnight auction? He goes, because I could tell it meant so much to you. And that's how he was.
Wow.
And he said, I could tell when you approached me about it, you were so passionate about it, and you had all these, ideas and this and that. And because I just knew that you're so passionate about it that you knew what you were doing, and you had a reason to do it. And he grew to love the midnight auction too. I mean, he would have as much fun as anybody, So, and I don't think he thought it'd be as wild and crazy as it eventually got to be. But
who thought that?
Yeah, nobody thought that. But he did. He did get to where he liked it, and you could see him there. He'd always be laughing and smiling. He would try to join in. Like if something didn't sell, he'd stick $100 bill inside the pages.
Oh yeah.
He used to do that bit, which is a hilarious bit, where he'd stick a $50 bill or $100 bill in the pages. But yeah, he would he'd listen to you once he trusted you. We got into arguments every once in a while. We got into some knockdown, drag out fights, and his thing was he would always tell you that I don't. What would he say? I don't respect you unless you stand up to me. So he would come on real strong. We're going to do it this way or not. And if you said, okay, well, I quit or I'm leaving, then he would know it meant a lot to you. You're like, okay, hold on. Okay, I don't want you to do that. So what do you talk? Okay, maybe I need to back off a little bit, because otherwise it was always his way or the highway. That's, we're going to do it this way. I don't want to do it your way. I really don't care what you think. And if you really argue passionately about it, and you really made that it meant a lot to you, he would finally back down, I guess, or make it say, okay, I understand what you're saying, but you really had to stand up to him, and he did not respect you unless you stood up to him. He didn't like if you just rolled over to everything he did. He would never respect you. So we all had our arguments with him one time, Gary, David, everybody. But in the end, like I said, everything would, if you believed in something enough, he would let you do it. And he'd say, okay, well, I don't see how you're doing it. I don't see why you're doing it. We're just going to do it. Okay, we'll do it. We had a big argument about T-shirts one time because never understood why he didn't want to make more money from T-shirts, because we could have made a lot of money through T-shirts over the years. He would always cut off T-shirt sales way too early, and we never sold T-shirts at the convention. And so one year I said, okay, do I have your permission to sell T-shirts at the convention? And he said, well, yeah, because you're not going to make any money doing it. Nobody's going to buy T-shirts at the convention. Like, they're all going to buy T-shirts at the convention.
Yeah.
Understand? He goes, no. You're going to be stuck with all these T-shirts you can't sell. So that year, I don't know, I like 30 or 40 T-shirts, sold every one of them, except for a couple. And the ones I didn't sell, I sold in the weeks afterwards. And so he reluctantly admitted that, okay, maybe we should sell T-shirts after the convention at least. So we started selling T-shirts after the convention, which still wasn't during the convention. Probably one of the things that Gary and David are going to change going forward. We really should be selling T-shirts during the convention, but that was just one of those things that he just had an opinion on, and you just had to take it. You know, I don't know why Doug thinks this, but all right, it's his convention. It boiled down to it was his convention. He's running it the way he wants to run it. So you know what? We're going to let him do what he wants to do.
Yeah, well, understandable. And we've got some comments that popped up about people wanting to buy reprints of some of the earlier digests. It could help fund the con. We've been discussing ways to help the con. Going forward, the con can't really run in the red. That's probably a reality of the times. You had, nobody can replace Doug when it comes to that. But just so folks know, something I'm going to throw out real quick. This channel is now monetized, so if you were watching stuff after the live stream or a nightly cast, you might see an ad pop up. If you don't want ads, we are going to be selling sponsorships for as low as $10 for the short 15-minute YouTube episodes. A live stream like this would be $25. That money will go directly to the convention. We haven't figured out how to get it all set up and done, but we know we have Long Con here and we have Pacesetter and a few others. The idea is this channel will find a way to add funds to the con so we can keep North Texas as we all know it. So if you don't want to see ads, which is not going to raise so much money anyway, but if you don't want to see ads, if you want to demonetize, the episodes as they come up, we'll seek sponsorship. But we're going to work the details out, Mike and I, and I think North Texas is in good hands. So just throwing that out. Figure there's an opportune time.
Well, that'll be good, and we appreciate the help there too. That's awesome. We're probably in the future. We're one of the things Doug would always insist on is he wanted the con to continue after he was gone. And so when he got sick, we didn't think about it very much for a couple years because he was still around. He was doing okay. And so for those that don't know the whole story, so Doug went in for a colonoscopy. He was having some issues, and they discovered stage 4 colon cancer. Probably would have died in about 2 or 3 months if he hadn't gone in. I just would have dropped dead one day. And we're like, oh, why'd he die? Oh, he had cancer eating up his whole insides. So I don't want to say they caught it just in time because they didn't. Fortunately, they didn't catch it stage 1, 2, or 3. It wasn't until stage 4. He was. So we didn't make plans for anything. And then as time went on, we would make more and more plans, and I would take over more responsibilities, and Gary would do more, and David would do more. And he slowed down a lot. The last few years were tough because Doug was used to doing a lot. And if he didn't get things done, he'd pull an all-nighter or he'd pull an all-weeker. He just couldn't do it anymore. He was too weak to do that, being on chemo. And so we had a lot of issues the last couple of cons with, it was actually, I remember saying to Gary, I was kind of glad that the con in 2020 only had about 80 people. I don't think Doug could have done more than that. He was just not feeling very well that year, and then of course this year, 2021, we got pretty much back to normal. Um, he couldn't come to the con at all because he had horrible operation that week. His intestine burst. He had to get his intestine sewed back up. So, um, yeah, he was well aware that at a certain point a couple years ago. So he started saying that what he wanted to do was he wanted to make sure the con continued at least for 1 year after he passed on, and longer if it could. So he appointed 12 of us as what he called table members, and their job or our job is to make sure the con continues into at least 2022. Now we're making plans right now, Gary and David and I, to make sure the con continues indefinitely, which you should be able to. It's not going to be that much of a problem. Luckily, the structure's there, and it's only about 500 people. It's not a big con. We should be able to do a fine job. We're going to do okay. And without Doug there to blow thousands of dollars on stuff, we should be able to do okay. But yeah, the con was real important to him at a certain point and then, like I said, once he realized that, oh, okay, I want the con to continue, then he was making plans for the future. But it was tough. I mean, he was a guy, I don't think he ever thought he was not going to be around. And so, I mean, up until the last few weeks of his life, I think Gary was still trying to get passwords out of him. Like, hey, I don't know the passwords to this account. You better give it to me because if you're gone, So he was still getting passwords up until a couple, 2 or 3 weeks ago. And there's probably stuff we don't have passwords now too that we're going to say, oh shit, we don't have passwords to that. So hopefully remember the email. Hopefully remember what the email is and then get the password link sent to us. But yeah, but the con was him, and he was the con. And like I said, if you thought about the con, you thought about him, and you thought about him sitting behind. He loved to sit behind the desk at the front and then talk to people coming in, or late night when things were going on. That was kind of his throne, right? That was where his base of operations was right behind the check-in reception desk, and he would just talk to everybody. And even at late hours, I'd go in and like I'd be doing something, having a drinking contest. I don't know what. I'd walk out, stumble out about 2 or 3 a.m. And Doug, we always be sitting behind the counter with like 5 or 6 people. And he'd be like, "Oh, you tired?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm going to bed, dude. I'm staying up till 5 in the morning." I'm like, "Good for you." And then I'd go to bed, then get back up, all bleary eyed. Then he'd get up like, "Oh, we stay up till 5 a.m. doing this. I'm like, "Well, good for you, dude. I can't do that anymore." So, the con was very important to him. He really loved that week. I mean, he loved his family. He loved spending time with his family. He loved taking them on vacations. He loved doing things. Loved his job, but he really, really loved the con, and he loved spending time with people at the con too.
Mike, we have our first super chat.
Oh, what, Mr. John Miller? Reprint old modules, make money. You know what? That's something I'm going to bring up to David and Gary. I think there's some older ones we can reprint up. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the contracts that Doug signed with these people was for unlimited reprints. He actually owns the material, so I'll check. It may not. He may not own the material. It may only have been one reprint only. But some of the stuff I think we can have reprinted. So we'll see about it.
Yeah, I'm gonna throw out an idea. You could even put up, dare I say, PDF versions on DriveThruRPG.
That was something I talked to Doug a lot. He was not keen on that, but I don't understand. I think he understood the technology of that as much as we do now. And I think that's a great idea because we always have people say, oh, I can't believe you don't have any PDFs of any of this stuff. Like it's going to be pirated. We don't, okay, big deal. Whoop-de-doo. So I don't know if he was concerned about pirating or if he just didn't care about making money on it or whatever, but that is a good idea. I think PDF versions of a lot of this stuff need to be out there. That's it's part of gaming history, and it's part of if you collect convention style modules. I mean, only having 100 of these printed is pretty it's pretty low print run.
Yeah,
especially stuff that came out years and years ago.
So just folks, just so you know, any of the super chats tonight, I think Google/YouTube keeps a third, but the rest will get forwarded to North Texas when we figure out what account we're going to forward the money onto. So, John, we appreciate it. Again, as Mike knows, and any of you who've gone to North Texas know, I consider North Texas to be my second home. I mean, theoretically, my parents have a place in the Poconos, and that could be like a second home. But when I go to North Texas, I feel like I'm home. I feel like I'm with family. There is no other convention that I can say that about. There is just something very special about North Texas. Mike knows that pretty much the moment that we knew that Doug's time was limited, I had offered whatever help I could offer, or Rachel, even if it meant coming out days before the con to help set up. Mike knows all that, and this to me is just an awesome thing to see others involved. There's people behind the scenes that are have already pledged to help the con. I'm not going to name any of them, but there are people that you probably already know, and the con is in good hands because it's family, and that's what Doug wanted, right? That's really that's really it.
Oh yeah, yeah. He was. It's funny because I'm look, I've been buying, selling, trading RPGs things since like the early '90s, and so I'm geared to look at almost any collectible type interactions. Could this make me some money someday, or how much money would this be worth someday, or if I did this, could I sell this for money? And I used to buy Gary Con modules when they first came out, the old ones, because I was thinking these aren't very high print runs and nobody's buying them. And sure enough, I sold them for a lot of money. Doug was not geared that way. He didn't work that way. He never looked at, okay. He didn't say we're going to print 100 copies of this module because I know it's going to be worth something someday. He would say I'm going to print 100 copies because I want it to be collectible. I want people to actually
Right.
come to the con to have a collectible. And he was just not big on that stuff. And his own collection was so funny. It's just so eclectic. I mean, he has. For a while, he was really into collecting some of the tournament modules, and he had multiple copies of them. But he sold them all. He sold them when he got sick and he needed money when he got his cancer. But he sold them because he only wanted to own them for a while. He owned them. He scanned them, and he looked through them, and then after that, he wasn't that interested. He wanted somebody else to enjoy them, and so he never really got the whole idea that you buy collectibles and you resell them for money. That just wasn't his gig, and that's the way I'm wired because I'm just wired that way weirdly. But he was never wired that way. That's just not what he did. He
Well,
didn't look at the financial opportunities for stuff like that. Let's put it that way.
well, it made you guys a good pair, I guess. By the way, Chris Doggill, super chat for 10. So
Thank you, Chris. Thanks,
thank you,
John,
Chris.
very much.
Chris, as some folks may or may not know, is also the Frugal GM, and he's also our supplier of whiskey.
Our whiskey taster dude.
So yeah, Mike, we might have to sell those tickets at a premium this year.
Ooh, yeah, we had fun this year. We had a lot of fun.
We might actually have to like make it like one of those Gary Con special events, where people have to like buy a special ticket for this event. But it was a blast. We live streamed it. You can find the live stream on this channel. We had a great time. Huge thanks to Chris and everybody that participated. Ty Beard was one of our.
Oh yes, Ty was there. Yes. Jason
So,
Braun was there. It was fun. We had a good time.
Yeah, no, it was really good. Bill Barr says you should delegate the compilation. You know what? Here's the thing: if you put, say, 3 reprints, and it was like North Texas RPG Con, compilation 1, put out a number of volumes, I may be able to find us an editor, if needed. Hey, we could use the super chat money to start putting money aside to pay an editor.
I'll see what our rights those are. From what Doug may have told me before, we may have not be able to reprint some of the earlier ones. Now maybe some of the later ones. The later ones were different. I'll have to check. I don't know if we're able to reprint some or not. So, oh, by the way, so let me tell you another funny Doug story. I'll tell you a couple of funny stories for sale. By the way, everything we just did was just very emotionally exhausting for me. I'm sorry, I'm real quiet now. I'm kind of like, that was very emotionally exhausting. I couldn't stop to take a breath almost, and so I'm just kind of marshaling my thoughts now. So I want to say it was either year 2 or 3. Doug got in his head that what if we ran a copy of something we didn't own and we didn't sell it, but we like gave it away for like a donation. And I said, that sounds like a really terrible idea. Like highly illegal and possibly something that would get somebody mad at us. But he didn't really listen to me. So year 2 or 3, I can't remember the year once again, he ran a copy of the tournament because Watsy's not doing anything with the tournament copy of Ghost Tower, which they never have, by the way. They've never reprinted, never have reprinted it. There's actually talk that they may not technically own the rights to it.
Really?
They do own the rights to the C2 Ghost Tower version, but the fact they've never one time ever reprinted the tournament version of Ghost Tower versus is kind of interesting. There's an interesting story about it. But anyway, so Doug thought, I'm going to copy these. I'm going to make them digest size so they definitely won't be recognized as being the original. And we'll print like, I don't know, 50 copies of them. But we won't sell them. We'll give them away for a donation of $20. So I was firmly against this plan. I'll have you know. 100% against this plan. So we did it. And people couldn't believe we did it. And they were laughing at the convention about it. And a bunch of people didn't buy copies. They got a free copy and they made a donation to the con. So Doug had made a call to Watsy the week before and said, hey, we're planning on doing this at the convention. Would you be against it? And he didn't hear back from him. Well, of course he didn't hear back from him. Either because it was too ludicrous to even think that they were going to respond, or because it takes us more than a week to get around stuff like that. So didn't hear back from him. Well, the week after, the word got out among the general populace we'd done that, and it was a bunch of gasping Karens. Oh, how dare you! I mean, people went ape shit. You would have thought we were Zach Smith, you know. I mean, you printed something you didn't own the rights to, even though it belonged to a multi-billion company has, but anyway, because they were outraged, because that's what outrage culture is. It's about getting outraged over dumb things. And so they were outraged. We reprinted that outrage. And so apparently a bunch of them found it necessary to call up or email Watsy and tell him the horrible, dastardly thing we'd done. And so he did get an email from Watts the week after. It was not a C&D. It was all it was no, we really don't want you to do that. And Doug said, oh, I already did it. You didn't get back to me. So I figured since you didn't get back to me, it was okay. And they're like, just don't do it again and don't sell any more copies. That's all they did. That was okay. It. So we're like, okay. And so over the years, the copies were privately given away, the ones we had left, to people that showed an interest in it. He would slip them a copy and say, here's this extremely hard to find, extremely illegal copy of Ghost Tower. I've actually seen some auction on eBay. They went for quite a bit too. Although I think some of those auctions were taken down because they were reported as being counterfeited material.
Oh no, not that.
Yeah. So that was just kind of the funny way his mind worked. He had to know that wasn't kosher, but
yeah, but
sometimes
you know what? It's like, well, it only counts if I get caught, and if I don't get caught, it's okay. By the way, Ty Beard.
Yes, thank you, Ty.
Unlike the others, I have $10 in genuine American legal tender. For his iPhone app, only let him put in $9.99.
How dare they? How dare that app?
How dare they?
Well, you could have put in $299.99. I mean, come on.
But not to care.
So that was just kind of the way Doug. He would do crazy stuff like that. I'll tell you a personal story about Doug. Every year around Christmas time, this is stuff that Doug never told anybody. This is stuff that I just saw, or you might hear some of these stories next week when we're on GDZ. But he never took credit. He did not trumpet his triumphs. He would not. He just didn't do. First of all, he didn't do social media at all.
That's right. He did not.
For those that don't know, he didn't really have a Facebook page. He had one that was called NTRPG Con. That was him. And he would post every once in a while to the NTRPG Con page, but he did not use social media at all. He was not a political man. He didn't vote. He didn't vote since I think he said the first time he voted was the only time he ever voted was 1980. I don't think he ever voted again. He just believed all politicians were equally evil and terrible. And so just didn't vote. And just didn't know politics. He didn't know sports. He couldn't tell you two Dallas Cowboys if you spotted him, Roger Staubach. He would okay. And he didn't. We joked about him last time I saw him. I said, "Do you still do that thing where you don't know any sports guys?" And we said, "Name all the Dallas Cowboys you know." He said, "Okay, Tom Landry, Roger Staubach." I think he named one of the running backs he liked when he was a kid, which is Calvin Hill. Calvin Hill. And that was it. No Drew Pearson, no Emmitt Smith. No, I mean, didn't know a single one. Just didn't like sports. Didn't enjoy sports. Didn't like sports. Didn't like politics. Didn't enjoy politics. Couldn't tell you who the president was most years or anything. Just wasn't interested in that. He was interested in his job and his family and gaming and hanging out with his friends at the con. That was it. He just didn't do any political stuff. But the story I was going to tell is right around Christmas time every year, he would take out several $1,000s, at least three. I was with him one time when he did a money run, $3,000 to $5,000 in hundreds, and he would tip various people all during the holiday season, $100 tips. Anybody that waited on him at a restaurant, cut his hair, just anybody he saw doing a service for him. I remember one time we were having a game day close to Christmas, and the pizza delivery girl got $100 tip.
Yep, Bob just mentioned that. Yeah.
Yeah, broke down crying. I mean, she was bawling because she told me that she didn't have presents. She didn't have money to buy her kids Christmas presents because they were at their fathers for the holidays and they were coming home. She said, "I didn't have any money to buy them presents," and she was just like absolutely floored. I think she hugged everybody in the room because she was just so excited. But he would do that every year, and that's just something he did that he didn't tell people about. So he would give $3,000 to $5,000 away every Christmas holiday just in tips to any place he went that had any kind of service. He would give him $100 tip. And I was with him at a lot of those places. We would be at Old West Cafe for breakfast, and he'd tip the girl $100. And I saw him do that a bunch of times, and so it was something he didn't talk about. He didn't brag about that.
No, he never did.
Go on. And most people don't know that about him, but that was just the kind of guy he was. He wanted everybody to have a good time around the holidays, and he really realized a lot of people he had a lot of charities that people don't know about. The charity game that we run every year is actual charity. We actually gave that money went to the charity. Now, for many years, it went to I don't remember the name of the charity, but it was for disadvantage. Oh gosh. It was a really good charity. I remember looking it up, and it was a 5-star charity. It was no scandals. It was a local charity, had to do with children without parents. I can't remember children. Anyway, it was a thing where they took kids that didn't have guardians. They took them to movies and events and stuff. And I can't remember the name of the charity, but that was where the money went for years. It wasn't a very big charity. And we specifically looked for one that wasn't huge and didn't make a lot of money. We're looking for something that was, and we did a lot of research on it. It was a really good charity. No hints of a scandal or anything. So that's what the charity game money went to. Now, the last couple of years, I know we changed the charity. I don't know what to. I guess maybe David might know. I'll have to ask him. But yeah, he did a lot of things like that behind the scenes that a lot of people don't know about. That's an addition. I tell you what, I saw him do this before too. Dad came up to North Texas and brought his 2 kids, and he had just heard about us somewhere. I'll be honest with you, didn't look like he had a lot of means. He wasn't dressed really snappy or anything. And he goes, "Yeah, I just heard y'all were having a gaming convention here. I thought I'd check it out." And he's like, "Well, it's like $60 a day, blah, blah." And the guy's face just fell. And you could tell he didn't have that money, because, him and 2 kids. He goes, "Well,
right.
Doug, just let him in." He said, "I'll tell you what, how about we do this, blah, blah," and just worked it out to where the guy got in and he gave everybody free stuff too. So not only did they get in for free, but they all got free shit. And the kids were just overjoyed. And the guy was just like, you could tell we just saved his ass because he didn't have, it was going to be like, $80 for him. And then, even though kids are discounted, it was still going to be $20 a kid. So we're talking $120, $130. One of the things we talked about a lot is you don't charge enough for your convention. And that's absolutely true. And the reason is because Doug and I always had this idea that we wanted a father or mother and 2 kids to be able to afford to come to our convention. Because a lot of conventions they can't. Conventions have got expensive, and so we wanted to keep it affordable for families, and that's one of the reasons we are probably not charging what we should be charging, and our rates have not gone up for years and years and years. Is because Doug wanted families to be able to afford to come in, and he was known for letting people in on the sly or letting kids in for free and say, "Oh yeah, your kids are free today," where kids were never free, but that was just what Doug said, right? He'd say, "Oh yeah. Somebody walk up with 3 kids. Oh yeah, I'm just gonna charge you an adult, and all your the kids are free today." And he did that a lot. And that was something, not once again, not something he bragged about or I even knew about unless I saw him doing it, which it didn't bother me. He did that. I thought it was great. As a matter of fact, we're gonna one of the things we keep talking about is we're going to have a Doug Rhea Memorial Fund,
Yes.
and the Memorial Fund is going to be separate from the con fund. Memorial Fund is going to pay for a family to come to the con free every year, or to get into the con free every year, not to come to the con. And we'll also one of the other things Doug loved was helping out professionals, like the aforementioned story about Michael Curtis or other people like that. And there's many stories like that. Let me tell you, I'm not going to drop a lot of names, but the Michael Curtis story was pretty public, so I didn't think that was an issue. But there is a lot of guys he's helped out over the years in the hobby. And Eric and I know this: these guys don't have insurance policies.
No.
A lot of them, they don't have retirement, and they're not working anymore, basically. And so Doug saw this, and he was a soft touch when it came to these guys. So the Doug Rhea Memorial Fund will also help out people like that. Eric and I were just talking this year about Steve Perrin. Before he passed away, his wife was in hospice, and he had to have a GoFundMe for her because they didn't have it. It was more money for the hospice than Medicare was being able to pay for. And I think I looked last time I looked at the fund. I think it was doing very well. But that's the kind of thing Doug would have given money to because he loves Steve Perrin, and he matter of fact, he did not know Steve passed until we saw him the last week. I guess he hadn't been online. Nobody had told him. So, which is too bad because Steve really loved to come to the convention too. But that's the kind of things that the Doug Rhea Memorial Fund will pay for families who can't afford to come, and for professionals in the industry that have issues, either mostly medical, because a lot of those guys are getting old right now, right? And so a lot of them have medical issues they can't really pay for. So. But there'll be more information on that. We'll work on that during the year. We'll talk about that a little more at probably later shows and stuff.
Yeah. I mean, again, it's just we're juggling balls that we kind of talked about and put into not we didn't put into motion, but we grabbed the balls, and now they're getting put into motion, and we realize there's a lot of stuff behind the scenes that we got to get put into play.
Mm-hmm.
But people should realize that Doug was about the community. He was about the community of North Texas, the people that were not just repeat congoers, but he was from my experience, he was excited to see new people coming to the con. It made him happy to see, I guess, the con family growing. It was great to see.
He loved walk-ups. Walk-ups were great because I mean, we loved anybody to come to the con, but walk-ups were especially good to him because we could never figure out where walk-ups came from because we do basically zero advertising at this point for the con. The first few years, we handed out a lot of flyers. We post up a lot of stuff in game stores or libraries. But as time went on, we realized that we're pretty happy with about 500 people. And so we haven't been advertising at all. We've been hitting that number without any advertising. So we get walk-ups. We're always like, where the hell did you ever hear about us? And it's funny, a lot of them hear about us online. They'll hear about us either through Eric's show, or I know Mike and Liz over the years, they've sent a lot of people to our show through their podcast. Well, Mike and Liz are times 10 more popular than Eric and I. I mean, they got a gigantic audience. So yeah, whenever they talk about our con, one year we had a guy from Russia that came, and great dude, man. I love him to come back. He actually had family in Dallas also. So he combined the trip, and he came and he heard about us on Mike and Liz show. Podcast. And so not knowing any more than that, he just got a plane ticket and just did a walk up. And so that was awesome. And then we had the kid from Ireland that came one time, and he did the same thing. He heard about us on Mike and Liz's show. So yeah, they've got it going on, Mike and Liz. But no, we'd have people that hear about us through various, and people would be so effusive in their praise. And I know for years, Frank and Tim and some other people, when they go to Gary Con or other cons, they would say, well, what's your favorite con? They'd say, oh, you got to go to North Texas. They tell people you have to go to North Texas. That's the con to go to. And so people were like, I never even heard of that con. So we still have lots of people that don't hear about us. And so they would come and they would have a great time. And then they would tell people. And so really almost all our stuff nowadays is word of mouth. We just word of mouth. And a lot of it was because they had such a great time here. And a lot of that was because of Doug. Because the con that Doug set up.
John, probably at the time it was probably save or die, but yes, they are now save for half.
Hmm.
So yes, and yes, their audience is much larger than us.
Oh yeah, good lord, they've been doing this for a long time, and they're very good at it too.
Oh yeah,
Um, but yeah, probably a million more stories I can give you about Doug. But that's if you don't know him or have never met the guy, it's probably the best introduction you could have to him is just what we've done here tonight. Just told you about him, and this is why the con matters. The con matters a lot because at the time we did the con, there was no Gary Con, there was no Gamehole Con, there was no Long Con, there wasn't these small cons. There's no Shire Con, there was no Apple Con, none of these guys. There was big cons or nothing. And the big cons, all they did was have the time, fourth edition, third edition, Pathfinder, Magic Card. I mean, nobody did old school game. I remember before we started our con, I remember looking to see if any con had an old school track, and the only one I could find was Total Con, and they had Frank Minster there running first edition games, like literally like 2 games a day for 4 days, and that was it. I
yeah,
could not find another con. I mean, yes, Gen Con, but the Gen Con's Gen Con. I'm talking about a smaller regional con that had any kind of old school track. There was zero, nobody. Um, I think Michicon might have had a couple of games. Maybe Bill Barsh could back me up on that. I don't know. Michicon might have, but there just wasn't really any kind of old school. So we started the con, and it just so happened it was exactly the perfect time because the OSR movement started. And we had Lamentations coming out. We had Zach Smith publishing stuff. We had Pace Setter. We had, I mean, all these guys, started coming out. Frog Games restarted everything. And it just so happens we hit exactly the right time. Gary Con was the same year we were. Now that there was a con before that called Lake Geneva Con, but the first official Gary Con, because Gary died in 2008, was 2009. And then Gamehole Con started a few years after that. And actually, Alex came to our con before there was even a Gamehole Con and asked us about running cons and what do we think worked and didn't work and this and that. So yeah, we it was kind of we lucked out right at the beginning of an era where these small cons, now you have lots of these smaller cons, because for a while everything was moving to these big giant entertainment cons, and in a way they still are. I mean, Dragon Con, Comic Con, even Gen Con. These cons are mega cons, but they're not about gaming anymore. These cons don't. If you don't understand, like Gen Con this year, you had a lot of people griped about it because of the way it was run. But it's not a gaming con anymore, guys. It's an entertainment con, and it does what it does. It does very well, which is entertain people. It's no longer a gaming con, and so if you want your gaming, you're going to have to support these smaller cons like Gary Con, like Gamehole, like us,
right.
like Shire Con, like Apple Con, like Long Con, like Total Con, because this is where the real gaming stuff happens. Gen Con's about cosplayers and
It's commercial.
it's
It's
it's,
commercial.
it's selling merchandise. It's a trade. Somebody said it perfectly. I can't remember who it was. It's a trade con. It's a trade convention. It is. It's
It's a
there for
trade
people
show.
to show. Yeah, it's a trade show. They're there to show off their latest product, et cetera, et cetera. So, that's mostly what we've done. Is we've created Doug created a smaller con that's fun to be at. That's affordable. Yet you could be sitting next to Errol Otis on one side and Steve Winter on the other side, and just really feel like you're part of the gaming community. And the amount of people who come to our con now that have their own publishing company, or like guys like James Shields and stuff that are artists that are published in tons of books, or like somebody like Eric who came up with Swords and Wizardry Light, then Swords and Wizardry Continual Light. And that's all these guys that published because of North Texas. It's amazing to have that to have those skins on your wall, to be able to say these guys came to our con first before they ever published this stuff.
Listen, North Texas. For me, it was huge. My last con, I think, was Gen Con 25 back in, I don't know, 93, 94, or something like that. And I hadn't been to a convention since then. And I remember talking about it on my blog that, hey, I think I'm going to check into North Texas. And then Mike was on, was it Roll for Initiative? You were on Vince Florio's podcast, and you were talking about North Texas, and then you mentioned and I read that I think Eric Tenkar might be coming this year. I was like, holy shit! I just got a shout out by the guy that kind of runs the con. Oh my god!
Mm-hmm.
I was driving home from work. I was like, I almost went through a light in Manhattan. Not good. But
Yeah, you were kind of big time back then. Now that I know you, I don't. Yeah, I'm like, yeah.
yeah, no, I'm not.
Back then I was like, well, this guy's big time. I mean, he's got his own. He does, he has his own page. Tenkar's Tavern is huge. He's got his own blog, and yeah, you weren't even doing podcasts that time. You were just doing the thing, or
Yeah,
maybe you just started doing podcasts. I can't remember.
I know. I don't think I was. No,
No,
I
I
didn't.
don't think you were. I think it was the blog. The blog was.
My first time on a podcast was the first North Texas. I met Vince and Glenn. They were doing live from the vending room, and
Oh
they
yes.
dragged me in for like 10 minutes, and it was a lot of me going, humana, humana. Like, I'm gonna do my Ralph Crandon impression. Humana, 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 Tenkar, humana, tab, humana, microphone. So it was really, really, really bad. But yeah.
So anyway, that's a couple other funny stories. Doug loved gun, big gun lover. Owns many guns. Always very responsible with his guns. Whenever you're at North Texas, you were very safe because Doug was there loaded for bear, even though you couldn't tell. And we had a lot of West Texas sheriffs came to the con every year. They were all loaded. So this is probably the safest con in the United States for a few years when all the West Texas sheriff. And that was a funny story too. They happened to be in the hotel we were at for a different convention and wanted to know what was going on. He's talked to him. Well, of course, Doug's a Leo, and so
Right.
ex-Leo, and so he started talking to them like, oh, well, we're guys. We have a group in West Texas. We love to play D&D, and they were all sheriffs and deputies and all this stuff. So they started coming every year, and that's fun. We still see them. We still see them, and they just met Doug through that. So they're like, oh, we're going to start coming to your con. Sure enough, they start coming every year. So that was cool.
I think my second North Texas, I bumped into the guy was had played for the Dallas Cowboys for a season or two professionally, and then became a federal law enforcement officer. But he was there for North Texas RPG Con and saw my name, recognized me from the blog, and started talking to me. And I'm just like, I'm talking to a retired professional ball player who's here at North Texas. So it was just mind blowing.
Oh yeah,
the type of people that come to the con.
That's how it was. So Doug had a special jacket made, or actually purchased it, that had like little compartments you put your guns in. You zip up, and you couldn't tell there's any guns in there. And so after he bought it one day, we were sitting at lunch somewhere, and he said, "Oh, I just want to let you know, if somebody comes in, it's after a shooting or something in a public place." He said, "I have 5 guns on me right now." I'm like, "Where?" He's like, "Well, I got one on my ankle. I got one on my back." I mean, he was telling me these guns. I was like, "What the fuck?" And he was, like I said, he was loaded for bear wherever he went. Now, thank God he never had to pull a gun, which is good. You don't ever want to have to pull a gun, right?
No.
He never had to pull one, but I always felt very safe with Doug because he was loaded, and he was loaded for bear. And he was like, if I go down, I want you to I have a gun here. I don't think you can use this gun, but the gun that's behind my back, he's like, just don't go down. If there's somebody comes in, you shoot them dead. Don't let me have to do anything. I don't want to have to do it.
You don't want to have to pass it off to the B team. Okay.
No. And more like the D team in my case. I haven't fired a gun in probably 8 years. So that would be not very good. You'd be really going down in being in Texas, I probably would be the D team. Seriously, there's probably 3 other people at the restaurant with guns. So, you don't want me holding a gun, but yeah, he was very good about, one of the things I'll miss most about Doug was going to lunch with him. We go to lunch and we just talk, and we talk about the con and what's going on in our lives. And mostly we talk about ways to improve the con. We always had ideas, and I'd always I said, "Do you see the latest controversy going on online?" Well, of course he didn't. He didn't know anything about social media. So I'd have to show him a story, and he'd laugh because he didn't know this stuff was going on. When stuff was going on with some of the icons in our hobby, Eric, he would never know. I'd have to tell him. I'd say, well, this guy just got in trouble for this or this. He goes, what? Because he just didn't. He's like most of us should be. He didn't pay any attention to social media. Didn't matter to him one bit. Just didn't get involved in the politics of that or the real politics either. But he just didn't care. He talked about one time. He joked. He said, "I'm going to invite Lorraine Williams to our con someday." I'm like, why? He goes, I just think it'd be fun. It'd be interesting. Wouldn't you like to talk to her? I was like, yeah, but I don't think anybody else here would like to. I said, and she doesn't want to come anyway. She hated gamers, very famously hated gamers. So I said, she's not going to want to come here. She lives in France somewhere or does something. I mean, she's, but I'm sure I think he tried to get a hold of her. Anybody like that, he would try to get a hold of. I mean, he called Monty Cook every year, could never get Monty to come. He just was not scared of anybody. If Gary Gygax had been alive, he'd have got Gary to come. No ifs, ands, or buts. Gary would have been at our con. I mean, he did get Ernie to come twice. Unfortunately, Ernie had to cancel both times. Luke has a standing invitation to come. Unfortunately, Luke is not. He has training the first 2 weeks of June every year. So unfortunately, Luke has never been able to come. Although Luke did get to meet Doug. But yeah, he didn't care who you were. He'd find your phone number and call you up. I mean, he called another cool story is so the first year we had the con, he was collecting some game stuff. He had the Wii Warrior stuff. Well, whatever happened to this guy, Peter Karsten? Well, guess what? Doug finds him and calls him. Hey, I'm Doug. The guy, Peter Karsten thought Doug was a nut, probably. This guy's calling about, and he hadn't done anything to do with Wii Warriors in 25 years. And so Doug's talking to him. So Doug talks to him and sweet talks the guy into getting him to give him the license to publish Wii Warrior stuff, which is insane. Because he didn't think his stuff was worth anything. He couldn't believe the prices he heard when Doug was telling him, it's worth this, that, and the other. And so that's why the first 3 cons we published, which actually helped us out financially quite a bit because we didn't have to pay anything for them. We got to keep all the money. We published digest-sized versions of Palace of the Vampire Queen, Misty Isles, and Dwarven Glory, which was awesome. And we actually had rights to publish everything, but Doug didn't want to do the board game for some reason. I don't know why. We did have a plan to do the board games at one point. Now there's a company doing them now, I believe, but we had the rights for however long and just never did anything with them. But yeah, that helped out. We actually had Peter Karsten at a couple of our cons. He was totally out of game at this point. He was a college professor teaching something, and had been divorced from Judy for years and years and years. But he was just. Who would think to call him out of the blue like that and just say, "Hey, can we have the rights to publish Wii Warrior stuff?" And and then what that's led to now is Pacesetter's published all the Wii Warrior stuff, and now another company's publishing all the Wii Warrior stuff because they've all got in touch with Peter Karsten. Maybe nobody would have done it if Doug hadn't done it first. They would have never thought to even talk to this guy. We hunted down the guy that did Tombs of Vala, C. Scott Clegg, and we asked for the rights to republish that. He goes, "Oh, you can just have all the copies in my basement," and so. We bought all the copies of Not Nadag Robber Headquarters and Tombs of Vala from him, which are a highly sought after third-party item. And for a long time, when you found those things on eBay, they went for $500 a piece. Well, we killed the market.
I'm about to say,
we absolutely drove the price down because the first con we had them at, I think we were selling them for $40 each. So we destroyed the market on those to this day because there's 100 extra copies floating around out there. Because of Doug getting there. But, Doug just found the guy's name, called him, and he lived in the same place and got that stuff. So the guy had no fear, man, absolutely no fear of anything. And he would do anything he could to get make sure the con did well or got something special or kind of cool or interesting like that. I'm kind of exhausted right now.
I'm about to say, yeah.
I'm about talked out. My voice is going, but I wanted to try to get out everything I could about Doug. And there's so much more that I didn't tell that I feel like we're missing a lot. And we'll probably cover some of that next Monday night on GDZ, everything that I missed here. And we'll have memories from David and Doug. Gary also, who both obviously knew Doug way longer than I did. I've only known him since like 2007 or so. They've known him since, for quite a while. Gary for a long time. And then Doug, obviously David grew up with him. So they'll probably be sharing some stories. But I don't know. I don't know what to do to sum it up. I don't like to stop telling stories about Doug. I could talk about him all night, And
well, that's just it, Mike. We're not going to stop telling Doug stories. That you're going to. These stories will probably crop up here or there during other talking crits. Certainly at North Texas, you're going to hear these stories because Doug's presence is going to be there. I mean, you can't help it. He's bigger than life, literally now. So, I mean, I got to say, I mean, my love of this hobby started before North Texas, but all North Texas did was just reinforce how great a community it is.
Sure.
And that's because of you and Doug starting this thing. And it's because, in the end, because Doug decided, yeah, let's get it done in 4 months. That's insane. Insane.
That's the story I was going to tell. I think I hinted at when I said the con almost didn't happen because we were sitting there and I'm sitting there thinking, let's just wait another year. I mean, we're not going to be able to get shit going in 4 months. And Doug pushed it and said, no, let's just do it and we'll see who shows up. I said, there's no point. It's February. I mean, we're talking, not even 4 months from now. We can't do this. And he's like, well, no, I'll just go get the place. We'll just have everybody local show. I'm thinking, okay, you're right. We can just do that. And we're not going to have any big name guests. It doesn't matter because I didn't know Doug was thinking about getting in touch with Rob Kuntz and Tim Kask and Frank Menser. But so I thought, yeah, we could do this small time and do this. But it's just so funny that, that's just the way he did things, man. He just did it. He didn't bother. Oh, let me tell one last story. I'm going to tell one last story. This is it, okay? Can I tell one last story?
Yes, you can tell one last story.
I'm going to tell one last story.
I'm going to give you a blessing. There, right, there you go. Go ahead.
So several years ago, Jim Ward was appearing at a small East Texas con called Tyler Rose Comic Con. And Jim Ward was going to show up there as so they had obviously got mixed up a little in Jim. They call him the father of Gamma World. He's the father of Metamorphosis Alpha. But, whatever gets Jim a free trip and whatever. So they invite him there because they had a very small gaming track. Most of their stuff was cosplay and comics. So we say, hey, let's go meet Jim there. It'd be fun. So Zach flies into town. So me, Zach, my brother, and Doug. You can already tell this is headed for trouble, right? Because look at that group, that foursome. We getting Doug's big Explorer. Of course, Doug's paying for everything, buys everybody hotel rooms. Robert's Fair Store. I know because it's awesome. So we drive there. So on the way there, we're driving down the road, and we see the sign that said fried pies. And Zach said, "What's a fried pie?" You've never had a fried pie? So Doug pulls in. We have fried pies. See, Doug gets one of everything in there. Fried pies are awesome. I don't know I can't believe you hadn't had fried pie. We had a fried pie. They even had fried meat pies. So they had meat in the pie, but they had fried fruit pies. Great place. Baker's Ribs. Stopped there, did that. We get into town the night. The first place he takes us to is an all-you-can-eat barbecue place with ribs. Oh, my God. They were delicious, and we ate. And I can't remember how much it was, $30 per person. Brought this big, giant thing of ribs. And we're just eating. I remember eating my whole thing I can't eat anymore. This big black lady comes out of the back. She goes, you need some more ribs? And I was like, I can't put another one. She goes, oh, honey, I can see what a big boy you are. You need another big of ribs. And so she got me another giant thing of ribs. I'm like, yeah, whatever.
Maybe.
I guess I can eat some more of these. And so, it was, so we're just sitting there. Blah. And so we go to the con next day. Well, the guy that did Tyler Rose Comic Con, he had overbooked by 30%. So we get in there, we get our rooms. The con was supposed to have something like 2,000 people. It had about 5,000. I mean, whatever it was supposed to have, it had 3 times that many. So I think it was supposed to have 1,000, ended up having 3,000. It was packed, person to person. The con, the dealer room, you're walking like this, and you couldn't even. I mean, it was crazy how you've never seen a con this packed, Eric. And we're like, this is insane. What is Jim? So we go to see where Jim Ward's game is supposed to be the next day. And it's this table shoved in the back of this giant gaming hall, and there's no room. I mean, you have to sit there, and there'll be a guy right in back of your chair, guys all around. It's hot. It's the middle, it's stifling. It's in the fall, but it's terrible. We're like, there's no way we're going to let Jim run a game here. Jim was walking around his cane at the time. He hadn't lost, I don't think he completely lost his foot yet, but he was getting along pretty slow. And so he said, there's no way we're going to do this. So Doug noticed there was a room kind of overlooking the con. There's a glass window, and there was kind of a party room there. So I don't know what you call a private room. He went to the front desk. He said, is anybody renting that room right now? No. How much is it? Blah, blah. Here you go. I want it the whole con, the whole weekend. Now, what I want you to do is move Jim Ward's game into that room. Okay, no problem. So went to Jim Ward's table. We slapped a sign on it that said, Jim Ward's game has moved to the convention room upstairs. We grabbed Jim. So, Jim, you're not going to run a game in that crappy ass crowded room. So we brought him up there. It had a big giant table, had its own bathroom, a little coffee machine. I mean, we felt like, and we look out the window and we see this giant mass of humanity. We felt like we were kings, like Rob and Zach and I are smoking metaphorical cigars, kicking back like, oh, look at the peons down there. And that was all Doug, because Doug bought that and paid for it and everything. So Jim ran all his games that weekend up in that room. We had chariot racing one night. We ran chariot racing. Doug had bought all but 2 tickets. That's true. So we had our own private con at the con, Eric.
Wow.
That was because we ran games up there. Jim ran games up there. We never dealt with the massive humanity down below. We had our own, we were just kicking ass up there. We had our own. They would come up there and take our orders for stuff. I mean, it was great. It was one of the funnest weekends I've ever had in my life. And then we got to see Jim pose in front of a picture that says, "Have a picture with the creator of Gamma World." We gave Jim a hard time about that because, like, wait a second, I don't think they know who you are, and I think they screwed up and they meant to say Metamorphosis Alpha, and they said Gamma World. So anyway, so we both thought about, Zach and I thought I'd get a picture with the creator of Gamma World, who was not Jim Ward, but it was great. We had a glorious time, and it was all because of Jim. I mean, Doug. Doug drove. He paid for everything. We couldn't lift our wallets. Paid for the rooms, paid for the game to move to upstairs, paid for the gas, everything. That's just the kind of guy he was. He was a hospitable guy, and we had everything. We had booze, food. I mean, what more can you ask? That was probably one of the most funnest cons of my entire life. Was that weekend spent in Tyler with Jim Ward, with Doug, Rob, and Zach. So, wow. And that was just the kind of guy Doug was. He wanted everybody to have a good time. He wanted to pay for everything. He didn't care. He just wanted everybody to have a great time, and we did. We had absolute great time. We had so many jokes about that con over the years, and so many things. I mean, to this day, Zach and I will give each other a hard time and say, "Oh, Jim Ward, the creator of Gamma World." we'll bring that up, and we instantly know that when one says it, we instantly know where it's going. And I mean, I have tons of stories from that con. I won't tell you, but we won a free signed card from Jim Ward, because we tricked Jim Ward into extending because Jim Ward said anybody that lived through his Gamma World game or his Metamorphosis Alpha game got a free signed card of him. And with 30 minutes to go in the game, Zach and I started peppering with him questions about the old days of TSR. He lost track of the game, talked for 20 minutes, and by the time he realized we tricked him, the time limit was up. He's like, "You guys, I can't believe what you just did." We said, "Well, like our card, please." He's like, and so then he killed us like 5 minutes later. But we still got the signed cards.
There you go.
Anyway, it was great. So that was Doug personified that trip, just the way he took everybody under his wing. He paid for everything. He wanted Jim to have this is about Jim having a good time. He saw that table. He said, "There's no way Jim's running a game here. There's no way. We're not going to make him run a game here." And he got the room, because I think if he hadn't got that room, Doug would have found a way to have him. He'd have bought him. He'd bought a room. He'd have rented him a room. He'd got something, because he was not going to let Jim get game in that room. And that's just the kind of guy he was. Great dude.
So apparently Ty was at that con with his daughters.
Oh my gosh, Ty! That was a nightmare. That was before we knew the greatness of Ty Beard. But yeah, that was a nightmare con. It was, there'd be lines, like they oversold everything. Like, so they have like some Doctor Who guy there, one of the Doctor Who's, and instead of like being 35 people in line, there was 300. I mean, that's the whole con. It was so terrible. It was the worst planned con ever seen in my life. It's so crowded. It just terrible. But we had a good time. We had a great, like I said, we went to dinner one night with Jim Ward, and he got to pry all the secrets of Gail Gygax out of him, which was pretty hilarious, and told us some other shadier stuff that I will never repeat online. Sworn to secrecy forever. But yeah, it was a great weekend. It was all because of Doug, and there's 100 stories like that about Doug, and that's what I always remember. Oh, and they did have some good seminars, Ty. There was a seminar that Mike Stewart and Jim Ward gave. I wonder if you went there, because I was there before I ever knew Ty. Ty and I been at the same seminar. That was a great little seminar they gave. So we went to that seminar one day. Tell a story about Doug, the hobby shop up in Lake Geneva, we'll have to say that for another time. That's a great story too. Anyway, I'm talked out,
Yeah, you look
and
exhausted.
that I wish I could keep talking all night about him. I could think of stories all night. I'm gonna really miss the guy. I'm gonna miss the guy a lot. The con's gonna go on. It's gonna go on in his name, and it's gonna be a living memorial to him. And as you know, as long as we remember him, he's not forgotten, right? And look, he was dealt a shitty hand, but it's amazing that somebody is able to do something that resonates with so many people that it can actually change lives. I mean, actually change lives, and that's what Doug's done. He's actually changed people's lives, and so that's an amazing legacy to have. It really is.
Yeah, yeah, and you're having a legacy like that is the closest thing that us mere mortals will ever have to immortality, because you've had an impact on so many lives. You live on through them. I mean, I truly believe that. And Doug had that kind of influence, and it's gonna last. And we're gonna, as a community, we got to make sure it lasts. So I have complete confidence that it will. Like I said, there's a lot of people who are stepping up to make sure that North Texas continues as the convention that so many of us love and hold dear. So, God bless Doug.
So as the night went on, I got two messages, one from David Ray and one from Gary, both my co-stars at Monday's show. From Monday's show coming up, they said, "Turn your computer off and don't use it." Like,
Stop using it. It's going to explode.
I'm doing the Doug Ray Memorial Special. I have to use it. So hopefully the viruses didn't do too much bad to my computer, but now I'm worried. Don't turn your computer off immediately. I'm like, I'm doing the middle of the show, man. Can do. So
there you go. See, that's why I use Macs, because before Macs, and I transitioned most of my family to Macs slowly because, oh my god, getting those phone calls.
Never click links. And this one it looked safe. It's not. So anyway, I'm sorry, but yeah, that's for Monday's show. God damn it, Zach! It's on YouTube. We'll have links up. As much, I guess, if Eric gets the links.
Yeah, when the links are up, I'll make sure that it's shared in all my communities.
It's going to be a longer show. Also, they usually do an hour. They're slackers. They do an hour if they're lucky.
I think
some shows they probably do like 15-minute shows. I don't know. They seem like their shows are very short, but they're going to do at least an hour, if not maybe more. They're going to have myself and David Ray and Gary Oliver on too. So. We're going to share a lot of memories. I probably won't talk as much as those two because those two need to share their memories too.
Right, and that means less Zach and Skeeter, so they'll just be there for.
Oh God! Well, then I can put up with it. Then if it's less,
yeah, Zach, they're just there for scenery. Folks, really huge thank you to everybody who participated in our live show. Thank you to the super chat donors. That money will go to one of the con causes. We will put details together as to how you can sponsor this channel. That money will go again toward the con or toward the con fund to help. Me and Mike have discussed a lot of this stuff. We're glad this channel can get monetized or sponsored, but we're not looking for the money for us. We're looking to put it to greater use. What would it buy me? A few game books, but we can put it to a lot greater use by
sure.
It kind of multiplies the influence of the money.
Yep.
So it really it makes me personally happy. So thank you. We really do appreciate the support. We're well over 1,000 subscribers. Let's say well over. We got 1,013, 1,014. Get the word out. The more people that subscribe, the more viewers we have, the more money we can raise for a few causes. Other than that, we're still in the midst of the world of COVID. Use your common sense. Be safe. Be well. God bless each and every one of you. God bless Doug, his family, his friends, the community that mourns him. I'm not trying to be overly religious, not trying to offend anybody, but times like this, I can't help myself. Folks, roll your dice, roll them well.
Thank you, guys. Thanks, everybody, for listening to us.
Yep. Good night.